probably not going to be the kind of driver that people were hoping for 3 or 4 months ago. Trade's positive, but it's not going to be the main driver of markets.
But overall, you think the days of multiple expansion carrying the load for the market are over?
No, I think that's going to continue. I think multiples are going to continue to expand given the liquidity surge that we're seeing. That's how we get to 3,500. We get further multiple expansion in the first half of the year.
And then you're just going to cut that off?
We don't know.
But it sounds like you want to be both bullish and bearish, because what we see, if you look at that base case, is a lower number. So there was no lower number there, and maybe it's not yours and maybe it's your firm's, but you both are bullish about the market, but a 3,000 number is bearish, however you cut it. And it's hard for individuals to time that, to say,
we're not asking
bullish, now will suddenly be bearish.
What we're saying is that the risk of a revaluation is there.
Of course.
Assuming
there's always risks there.
No, but not because of some geopolitical event or something we can't predict. We can predict that the Fed has told us that they're going to stop balance sheet expansion at some point this year, assuming the repo market calms down, and we think that's sometime in April. So, knowing that, we have to be prepared that could be a potential harbinger of multiple contraction. That's it. Yeah. That's all we're saying.
How would you put the last, several days into perspective in the way you're thinking about the market with these geopolitical tensions ratcheted up?
So, the energy thing we think makes perfect sense. So, first of all, I think the most important thing about the energy market in the last couple of days was that even when oil was spiking, the market was massively backwardated, meaning the market did not believe for 1 second that this was going to be a sustainable move in oil prices. So we felt like that means the oil stocks probably aren't going to really go up that much here. And that's our view. We're still neutral on energy, not because we're positive on energy, but because there's so much short covering that could happen. It's really volatile. This is not a group to be short or long necessarily. It's just there, and it's very small. So we think the backwardated market tells us very clearly that the market is still very suspicious about the long-term price of oil, and that's what energy stocks are. They are a long-duration play on the price of oil.
What has to happen for you to come back on the show and say to everybody, you know what, I didn't look at this as bullishly as maybe I should have? What has to fall into place for you to change your 12-month view, let's say, on the market?
Well, first of all, I think
before it happens, not after the fact.
First of all, I think we've already said that we underestimated the power of the Fed last year, and that we've been very explicit about that. So we're the first ones to say we were too conservative last year on the price of stocks. We were not too conservative on our forecasts. So fundamentally, I would say we were probably the most accurate of anybody on the earnings projection last year. And then we were too conservative on basically liquidity. And that's what we've changed. So we've already changed that view. And now the question is, can that liquidity persist? Or is there something else going on that could make multiples continue to stay at 19, 20 times, which is what it's going to take to get to 3,500 without that liquidity injection? And we'll see. We'll make that decision in the next 3 or 4 months as we kind of watch things play out. Earnings would have to be higher, so we'd have to get more confident that it's not 2 or 3% growth, but it is 10 or something in that range, and it is broadening out to the small mid-cap companies. Because let's be honest, Scott, the risk in the economy is not from the Fed so much, it's from do these smaller mid-cap companies decide that they are losing money or their earnings are shrinking and they have to cut back, not just on CapEx, but maybe they got to cut back on labor. We don't know. They haven't done that yet, but that is still, I think, the biggest risk to the economy in the back half of the year if the earnings picture doesn't change. So that would be the biggest switch. If we saw small mid-cap companies start to see operating leverage again, and we saw them start to improve their earnings picture like the large cap companies, that would be something that would get us structurally more bullish.
Thanks for coming in again.
Thanks for having me.
Good to see you. Appreciate the debate, as always. Here's what else is coming up on the Halftime Report.
Another bullish tech call straight ahead. #1 Apple analyst Tony Sacconaghi joins us as he ups his price target on the stock. Plus, 10 growth stocks that still look attractive right now. The Halftime Report with Scott Wapner and the Traders is back in 2 minutes.
Interactive Brokers charges 3.06.
Finally another commercial, said no one ever. Visit tunein.com/premium to upgrade now and get over 45 commercial-free music stations.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour, but we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. with live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
Hello, I'm Nat Coombs from ESPN's The Nat Coombs Show, which admittedly is 1 out of 10 for original podcast name, but 10 out of 10 for NFL chat. Every week, we're dropping 4 episodes with an all-pro lineup of terrific guests, journalists, comedians, players, coaches, you name it, all getting you up to speed with everything gridiron. The Nat Coombs Show, American football, British accent. Add to your favorites and listen on TuneIn.
The NBA is on TuneIn Premium.
Pointer by Anthony Davis. It's good!
Each week, TuneIn picks an NBA game you just can't miss. 2 of the top teams in the Western Conference go head-to-head. This Sunday, the Clippers are at the Nuggets. Tip-off is at 8 p.m. Eastern.
3 ball on the way. He got it to go! 3 from the angle. Got it!
Search NBA to follow your favorite NBA team today.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm Sue Herrera. Here's your CNBC News update at this hour. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says President Donald Trump should be congratulated in connection with last Thursday's attack that killed Iran's top commander. Netanyahu classified Qasem Soleimani as a dangerous terrorist at an event in Jerusalem. The NTSB is monitoring developments surrounding the Boeing 737 crash in Tehran. Ukraine International Flight 752 crashed early this morning shortly after takeoff and then burst into flames. All 176 people on board were killed. Families in Puerto Rico are camping outside a day after the strongest quake hit that island in more than a century. The 6.4 magnitude quake killed 1 person. It destroyed hundreds of homes and businesses as well. And the Takata airbag recall is widening. The company is recalling an additional 10 million airbag inflators that could explode with too much force. You are up to date. That's the news update this hour. Scott, I'll send it back to you.
All right, we appreciate it, Sue. Thank you. Mike Wilson mentioned that Morgan Stanley raising its price target on Microsoft to $189 from $157. That's a new street high. Morgan Stanley saying Microsoft remains the best positioned name in tech for the emerging hybrid cloud architecture, widely held. Obviously, Joe, you own it. Steve, you own it. The stock put in a banner year. We all know that, up 55%. But, you know, a lot of these stocks in that universe had great years.
They did.
Too bullish?
Very logical premise on your part, but I'm going to let the market or in a earnings quarter that does not look like the prior 8 quarters for Microsoft dictate what my actions are going to be in the stock. And until I see anything negative, it's not going to reverse my commitment to being long Microsoft. I think the other thing about Microsoft is that it's been very enduring in the privacy and the regulatory technology conversation. They have not really been exposed to that. The diversification story of Microsoft we've all known about and talked about on the show. The cloud component is particularly the strength. And there's no reason, just because you suspect that maybe high is too high in terms of price, to move away from it until you get that actual evidence.
29 times earnings. Everybody cool with that?
It seems a little pricey. And Microsoft has been a fantastic stock. We didn't own it. We wish we owned it. But there may be other names out there. We think there are other names out there. And, you know, we're talking about low teens EPS grower, 29 times this year's earnings, 26 times 21 earnings. So perhaps it needs to pause and grow into that price.
How do you deal with that?
I disagree, and I'll tell you why. Because the company's clearly well managed, and they manage the street very well.
Yeah.
So they put out their targets, they put out their guidance, and then they meet it or exceed it. And that's as important to a stock, in my view, particularly in this market, going back to what I said earlier, as valuation. So I actually think it's cheap because I think it deserves a premium multiple on both those. Then you get to their dominance in certain areas. This is just a great stock for the market. So I look at others that I own, like Adobe. Adobe's much more expensive than this. So to me, this multiple should move up towards Adobe. Now, I'm not saying that I expect to get there, but as long as momentum continues, as long as management guides the street and lives up to what they promise, stock's going high.
Also, some very smart acquisitions. You know, we talk a lot about, well, who's going to buy Twitter? Could someone buy Twitter? But how about what Microsoft did with LinkedIn?
Yeah.
And the value that has now been realized.
There's another reason, though. It's 10.5% weighting in the triple Qs. It's 4.5% weighting in the spiders. Those are just two ETFs. I mean, every time a dollar comes into any of those ETFs and there's a huge wave to passive investing, it goes to Microsoft and other names, which I think we're about to talk about, right?
Yeah, like Apple, which
like Apple
hit another record high today, and the top-rated analyst on the street raising his price target on Apple, Tony Sacconaghi, senior analyst, Bernstein. He joins us now. Tony, welcome back. Happy New Year. It's good to see you.
Happy New Year to you, Scott.
So you raised your price target to $300. The stock is north of that, and you've been a chaser. Man, have you been a chaser. October 23rd, you go from 205 to 225. 8 days later, you go from 225 to 250, and today you go from 250 to 300, but the whole time you keep your rating the same at market perform. You have to explain to our viewers how you do that, because people are throwing their arms up in the air and saying, when is Tony going to get it? When is he going to get it? That this stock is just going higher, and he's missing it.
Well, we have missed it, and you know, we don't deny that. We raised our price target because we believe that investors are looking to the 5G cycle, which is fiscal 21, and so our estimates go from $13 in fiscal 20 to $16 in fiscal 21. And so if we apply a similar relative market multiple to the market on 21 earnings, which is where we think people are now looking towards, that's our price target. Now, let's not forget the tech sector was up 30+% during the year. Our target prices are always linked to where market levels are. And so if we start the year 200 in the tech sector, the market rent goes up 30%. Our price target for all our stocks would go up, you know, all else being equal, 30%. And as I said, I do believe that people are looking forward in the 5G cycle, and we see significant earnings growth year over year in fiscal 21 for Apple.
You know, the other part of this is that, and our prior guest, Mike Wilson of Morgan Stanley, mentioned Apple as an example of how investors are looking for quality. They're looking for quality names, and even things that could have a bit of a defensive bent, if people want to have that narrative around Apple, that it's kind of a defensive name. The stock just goes up.
Yeah, look, I mean, clearly the stock has, you know, feels like it's gone up every single day over the last quarter or so in particular.
Or year.
Yeah, you know, particularly pronounced in the last quarter. But I do think there is some truth to what you're saying around quality. The market has put a premium on quality. We've seen a bit of a rotation over the last 6 months out of more expensive stocks to less expensive stocks. And so Apple ticks both of those boxes. And as you were all discussing prior to my joining this, you know, it's a huge index weight. And so you have that. We have a big buyback that's ongoing from Apple. They buy back about 5% of all shares traded in a given quarter. And so that's also provided a technical boost. Now, look, nothing goes to the moon forever, and that's the dilemma that we struggle with. We're well above consensus for fiscal 20, largely due to AirPods. We're well above consensus for fiscal 21. The question is the buy side and the average investor ultimately already there? And that's the difficult part about gauging if and when the music might stop. Right now, we see numbers going up, and that's generally pretty good. Now, many people on the buy side also believe that, And so, that's the tough call to make in terms of whether one continues to be overweight Apple or not.
I feel like in some respects, though, now you've kind of backed yourself into a corner in that the stock's appreciated so much. You've had a perform rating on it. So how can you get out of that corner and upgrade it anytime in the near future, even as shares continue to appreciate? It's going to be much more difficult for you to tell investors, even though the stock is at new highs and it repeatedly hits them, to buy it.
Yes and no. Look, I think as an analyst, you always have to be honest and true to your work. We did some work in December where we did a really deep dive into AirPods, and our conclusion was the street is mismodeling that people don't understand how big AirPods could be. We think they could grow 150% in fiscal 20. So that's new and incremental and positive to our model. And that could certainly be a basis for recommending the stock. And I think fundamentally we have no qualms with the fundamentals of the company. As I said, we're notably above consensus. I think the issue is really gauging, at what point is that all priced into the stock? Because we have consensus, which is sell-side analysts like myself, but we have investors. And, I've spoken to many long-term investors who have been really bullish on Apple, who just say, look, I think everything is great. We're seeing a valuation that on a relative basis is higher than it's been since 2009, which is when Apple was in the peak of iPhone growth. So we're seeing Apple trade at a valuation that's at a 10-year high when the company is fundamentally a different and lower growth company than it was 10 years ago. And I think we and many investors struggle with that, and that's the dilemma.
Joe Terranova has something for you before we go.
Tony, as an Apple shareholder, do I have a false sense of comfort here? Because I read your note in December, and a lot of the fundamental momentum behind Apple is the ability to grow revenue for AirPods. I think it's $6 billion in 2019, and then I think you cite that it could go to $15 billion over the coming year. Is there a false sense of comfort there that potentially the company could bundle it into some form of a subscription or the purchase of a phone?
I don't know if it's a false sense of comfort. Again, it's Apple doesn't disclose much around the AirPods, and so I'm not sure that many investors have really put very precise numbers around it. And so I don't think they've been lulled into this false sense of security. I think there is a narrative that goes as follows, which is services is doing well and will likely not slow because of the new services. There's a 5G cycle that should lead to, potentially better units, but also higher ASPs, which will help. Apple has shown that it can come out with some new hardware products that matter. And whether we think AirPods are 10 billion or 15 billion, I think there's a confidence behind the fact that, maybe Apple can also create products on the hardware side. So collectively, those things plus the buyback and quality factor that we talked about are propelling the stock upwards. And I think it's, the tricky part about investing is, knowing when to sort of go with your hand and knowing when you've captured the majority of the gains. And I think that's really what we struggle with, because our outlook has become more positive on Apple, but we see the market sort of agreeing with that in terms of the shares going up. And that's the bigger dilemma, I think, that we face.
Tony, we always appreciate your candor. Good
Thanks
to have
for
you
having
back
me,
on the show.
Happy New Year to all of you.
All right, you as well. We'll talk to you again soon. That's Tony Sacconaghi. Want to quickly wrap that up?
Here's what I'd say. There's a distinction between being a company analyst and being a stock analyst. So he's clearly focused on the company. The company has not performed tremendously well. Down earnings, flat earnings. Tim Cook actually got paid down. But if you look at it as a stock, you can't look at it as a vacuum. Just Apple, you have to look at what's going on around you. Microsoft, Adobe, Tesla. It's going to keep going. And 5G, in my view, that phone upgrade, which they've already started ordering components, is going to be the biggest product. It's going to dwarf 2009.
This is why Cramer advises people. I know we say it 1,000 times, and he says it 1,000 times, and it's worth repeating 1,000 times. Own Apple. Don't screw around with it. It's too hard.
Agree 1,000%.
You can trim it.
Deal with
I've added to it, actually.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
You want to take some profits because of a tremendous gain? So be it.
It's going higher.
I added to before Christmas.
Trying to find the sell and the in point on a stock like this becomes unbearably difficult.
It is the market, Scott, and I'm sorry, that's what I keep trying to say with these ETFs. Sorry about my throat. Is a dollar comes into the market mostly in passive. A lot of it goes to Apple. It's the biggest weight. It's 11% in the triple Qs. It's 5%, 4.6% in the spiders. They're just the money flow technically comes to it. Forget the fundamentals. I don't like the multiple. I still own it, but it's going higher because of the ETFs.
All right, let's jump to Deirdre Bosa. She has a news alert for us out in San Francisco. Speaking of tech, hey Deirdre.
Hey, Scott. SoftBank backed Zoom is laying off 360 positions, accounting for about half of its workforce, and it's also shuttering its robotic pizza business. The company's CEO and founder, Alex Garden, tells me that while today's difficult, the changes being made will focus the startup on packaging, and this is an area where they have seen some momentum. Now, SoftBank's Vision Fund invested in Zoom in 2018, valuing it at $1 billion. Previously, it was valued at just $218 million. But, Scott, these layoffs, they really represent another black eye for the Vision Fund, which of course has seen a number of its portfolio companies announce layoffs and executive changes, especially over the last few months. Back to you.
All right, appreciate that. Deirdre Bosa out in San Francisco for us. We can't have the robot making the pizza, right?
No.
Like do the little toss thing, right? Isn't that part of the thing?
Yeah, I mean, you and I will go to some places.
Throw that up.
Lower Manhattan,
hand stretch.
that's the real
hand stretch it,
pizza.
right?
Yeah, that's a real pizza.
All right, up next, 10 high growth stocks that will still look attractive. Halftime is back in just 2 minutes.
It's a 13-hour flight. That's not a weekend trip.
I spy with my little eye something beginning with B.
Bike.
Nope. Banana tree.
Oh, of course. We must have missed it. Although you might not be able to see it, your small actions can have a real impact with Shell. Drive carbon neutral by filling up and using Shell Go Plus today. Make the change. Drive carbon neutral. Shell. Go well. See goplus.shell.com/CO2 for details.
Imagine yourself in an unspoiled paradise, discovering the charms of a new city, or sampling street food with the locals. Fly from London to more than 160 destinations worldwide and make 2020 a year like never before with Qatar Airways, named world's best airline by Skytrax. Our incredible selection of special fares are available now. Book today at QatarAirways.com. Qatar Airways, going places together.
Puts his head down, crashes, and the snap is good. The hold is good. The kick is on its way. It is good!
Did you know all weekend long the NFL playoffs are on TuneIn?
In for the touchdown.
Search NFL to never miss a moment of the action.
Be better informed, be better prepared. The Better Network is on TuneIn. This is Brent Musburger. Search BETR and start hanging out with me and my guys in the desert weekday afternoons. The Better Network is now on TuneIn.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour, but we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC,
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium,
CNBC, and Fox News Talk,
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats.
you can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
You might already know that TuneIn allows you to listen to all the pro sports leagues wherever you go. But did you know TuneIn is also home to the wide world of college sports?
Open three, DeAndre Hunter got it! Handoff Carruthers, big hole right side. He leaps and he surges in. Touchdown!
From live college football, basketball, and baseball games to podcasts and coaches shows fueling your love for the game in your school. And the best part is, it's all free. Search college sports to find your team or league.
Hi, everybody. I'm Becky Quick, and here's what's coming up on the exchange. The president imposing new sanctions on Iran, but also offering a bit of a peace offering. We have the very latest on this and whether this de-escalates tensions in the Middle East. Plus, the market seems to think that the risk is off the table, but are investors getting ahead of themselves? We'll take a look at the prices trade. And Carlos Ghosn may have escaped Japan, but what legal predicament could he be facing now? We'll break it down. We have that and much more coming up on The Exchange. We'll send it back to Scott.
All right, Bex, we appreciate it. We'll see you in just a few. Goldman Sachs is out with a list today of high-growth stocks that still have reasonable valuations, according to them. Some of the names on the list include Alphabet, all-time high today, Domino's, Costco, Microsoft, which we've already talked about, Lowe's, Raytheon, defense stocks have been on the rise, Dollar General, Lockheed. What do we think, Carrie Firestone?
I like some of those names. So we own Charter, Amazon, and Booking. So 3 of the names. And we own them for some of the reasons that I've read that Goldman does. We've owned Charter for years since we owned Time Warner Cable. They bought Time Warner Cable. That integration took years. It's finally behind them. They really have a strong cash flow. The subscribers they're losing because they're cutting the cord, they're making up on broadband. So we like Charter. Google, we've talked about, has been an underperformer. It was lagging. It was a relatively low PE stock given its growth rate, and it started to outperform. So like that one. And Booking Holdings, it's moved fast into the space of ticketing, and particularly overseas. As the dollar comes down, that should be good for their earnings growth.
Joe, Domino's?
Own Domino's. I also own Microsoft on the list.
Know that.
Yeah, so I talk about those a lot. Let me give you a name that I talked about recently that's on this list, O'Reilly Automotive. Stock is up 150% since early 2017. They reported a fantastic quarter in October. The stock is kind of based above the $400 level. I think you can buy it here using a stop below 380. It has the fundamental momentum, and all you're really going to do to get out of this stock is wait to see if they report a bad quarter, which they haven't, multiple quarters.
Jimmy, I don't want to hear about Alphabet necessarily because I get that. What about some of these other names on this list?
This is a good list. This is diverse, and this is not just taking the high flyers. There are stories behind this. So Tractor Supply. I'm sorry, don't own Tractor Supply. But I'm looking at it. No, forget, besides the parity, I mean, this is a company, rather, that is defensible against online retailing, and it has a lot of growth potential ahead of it with the rest of the United States. So that's one that I like, particularly. Lockheed Martin, I talked about it last week. Now, this one you got to chip away at because it's risen so much over the last 5 years, but the F-35 is in the sweet spot of production right now. Other countries want it, and they're big in satellites, which is, look, this is where the money is going. Defense budgets are going up.
Expedia is the one I disagree with, one of the ones I disagree with. I sold the stock about a year and a half, 2 years ago. I haven't missed anything. They're being disintermediated by hotels, by airlines. They're going direct there, meeting the prices, putting less inventory on the site. That's one I wouldn't own.
Okay. All right. If you have questions, we have answers. Next, in Ask Halftime on Visa, Intuit, Alibaba, and more. Send them our way. We're going to do that in just a couple of minutes when we come back from this quick break.
At Fidelity, imagine yourself in an unspoiled paradise, discovering the charms of a new city, or sampling street food with the locals. Fly from London to more than 160 destinations worldwide and make 2020 a year like never before with Qatar Airways, named world's best airline by Skytrax. Our incredible selection of special fares are available now. Book today at QatarAirways.com. Qatar Airways, going places together.
Here at Tesco, we're celebrating over 100 years of great value with even more great prices that take you back. Like a 280-gram Tesco stone-baked pepperoni pizza, now half price from £3.50 to just £1.75. All this week at Tesco.
Selected larger stores subject to availability. Offer ends 14th of January.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted!
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown to Keenan.
Search NFL today.
Smart sports wagering talk is now on TuneIn. This is Brett Musburger. The Better Network is now on TuneIn. Search BETR. Be better informed. Be better prepared. And remember, cash and tickets is what it's all about.
Cutting for the net. Scores! On the goal line, Marchand scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
All right, we're back. Let's answer some of your questions. As promised, Rob in Toronto for Joe Intuit. Still into it.
I don't hold the stock. The stock has fallen back 18% from August. Reports on February 21st come back a little bit. Traded a rich PE, went it back in August about 43 times, down to around 34, 35 times right now. I potentially would buy it, but let's see what the quarter looks like February 21st.
All right, Jimmy, from Brian in Chicago, your thoughts on Marathon, considering the expected spin-off of Speedway in 2020 and the recent move in oil?
Yeah, so number one, the expected spin is not priced into it. Number two, the oil price move. You know, when oil goes up, at first the refiners come down in price because inputs go up. But then what happens is margins go up. They raise gasoline and refined product prices, which is what's going to happen here. A lot's going right for Marathon Petroleum in 2020. Trades at book value, buying back shares, great dividend yield, and it's got activists that are going to split it up.
All right. Weiss from Dan in Asheville, North Carolina. Is there a breakout for Baba coming above 220?
I believe there is. Look, in order for an insurance company in China to be able to invest in stocks, they've got to have a listing over there in Hong Kong. So you continue to see interest go into it. The fundamentals are strong. Their liquidity is obviously good. And you take a company like Foxconn that reported their second best quarter ever just 2 days ago, 25% growth in the quarter. That's also an indication of how things are going in China. So I love this stock. I don't think it's too late to buy it. It will break out.
All right. Carrie, lastly, from Zach in Nebraska, buy more Visa? What do you think?
I think you can buy Visa. It's had a very good year, but 85% of payments globally are still done with cash or checks. So there's a long runway, and consumer spending, particularly in the United States, continues to be good. So Visa could go higher.
I don't know if I hope we have time to do this. Can you guys throw up shares of Grubhub? Grub, please. I just want to get something before we go to break real quick, because this stock is surging higher. There's a Dow Jones report that Grubhub hires advisors to consider a sale or acquisitions. According to sources of theirs, strategic options include a possible sale. That follows a big decline, in those shares. That stock's now up more than 12%. Oh. I bring it up because it's relevant to the conversations that we've had on this show with the likes of Jim Chanos, you remember at Delivering Alpha, when he sat with us and told us why he was shorting this name. It's obviously a crowded space, right? Many names are in there. It's been a sort of dog-eat-dog world in that space, but apparently they are discussing their strategic alternatives. According to Dow Jones, the stock is up better than 12.5%. I just wanted to get that in there quickly because it was on the move. Final trades are next.
Shipskis presents Ski Moguls.
Imagine yourself in an unspoiled paradise, discovering the charms of a new city, or sampling street food with the locals. Fly from London to more than 160 destinations worldwide and make 2020 a year like never before with Qatar Airways, named world's best airline by Skytrax. Our incredible selection of special fares are available now. Book today at QatarAirways.com. Qatar Airways, going places together.
You might already know that TuneIn allows you to listen to all the pro sports leagues wherever you go. But did you know TuneIn is also home to the wide world of college sports?
Open three, DeAndre Hunter got it! Hand off Carruthers, big hole right side. He leaps and he surges in, touchdown!
From live college football, basketball, and baseball games to podcasts and coaches shows fueling your love for the game in your school. And the best part is, it's all free. Search college sports to find your team or league.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, hook, into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and tune in on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
The NBA is on TuneIn Premium.
Pointer by Anthony Davis. That's good!
Each week, TuneIn picks an NBA game you just can't miss. Two of the top teams in the Western Conference go head-to-head. This Sunday, the Clippers are at the Nuggets. Tip-off is at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Three ball on the way. He got it to go! Three from the angle. Got it!
Search NBA to follow your favorite NBA team today.
Cutting for the net. Scores! On the goal line, Marchand scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
You can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
Online now. Read Annie Pay's article on why Netflix may have a major rally in January. Go to tradingnation.cnbc.com now.
We're back. Constellation Brands beating earnings estimates, raising its outlook. Carrie, you own the stock.
Yeah, I think we're relieved. I got to just say that because it has been a terrible stock recently. But they came out with better beer sales. They've raised guidance. We all know that they've got a problem with Canopy. The whole marijuana business has not worked out as well in the marketplace as expected. But we are encouraged that maybe they've turned the corner and that management knows what they're doing. They have their ducks in order and that they continue to have a good year.
All right. You own it as well, quickly?
Yeah, stock's been a dud. It's been dead money for a year, but that's consolidation, and it hurts when consolidation happens, but now it looks like it's poised to go higher.
All right. The CEO, by the way, is going to be on with Kramer tonight on Mad Money. It's an exclusive interview. Don't miss that at 6 o'clock Eastern time. Okay, let's do final trades quickly, and then I want to throw up Grubb again. Go ahead.
Keysight Technology, that's a CES presentation that went real well. Back into the name once again, 5G technology.
Jimmy?
Electronic Arts, another name that consolidated, but now is clearly breaking out.
Charles Schwab finally starting to perform. Interest rates going higher could be good for them.
Weiss?
United Airlines sold off on the spike in oil. It should recover that and more. The planes are full. Consumers, just full of pockets. Full of
Let's quickly throw Grubhub shares up if we could once again. That spike higher, just want to highlight it for you. Dow Jones reporting yet again that Grubhub is in talks, considering its strategic alternatives. The question is, will anybody buy them? Right? They obviously have a struggling business. The stock has gotten hammered throughout the better part of the year. Jim Chanos publicly short on the name. Is it a recognition that their business is that bad that they need to finally put themselves up for sale, and who, if anybody, will actually buy it?
The answer to your question is yes.
Yeah.
That's a big spike on rumor.
Yeah, for sure. All right, that does it for us. The exchange with Becky begins now.
Thank you, Scotty. Hi, everybody, and welcome to The Exchange. I'm Becky Quick. Here's what's ahead. The president tries to ease geopolitical tensions, saying Iran appears to be standing down. We are following all the developments. Plus, stocks moving higher despite any uncertainty out there. The NASDAQ and the S&P at all-time highs today. So can anything really hold back this rally? And then the great defense. Carlos Ghosn gives a very candid and very long news conference, vowing to clear his name. Can he do that after fleeing the charges that he was facing in Japan? Before all that, though, let's focus in on the markets. We do that with Seema Modi. And Seema, I would not have believed this last night when you saw the futures down by 400 points. The reversal we've seen today has been huge.
Yeah, it's commendable, really, the intraday reversal for the market. And those comments from President Trump, Becky, really moving the market. He said that Iran appears to be standing down after its missile attack in Iraq last night. It is those comments sending the Dow to is up about 205 points after being down as much as 400 points in pre-market, a record high for the S&P and NASDAQ at this hour. Take a look at the story in the energy market. Oil prices initially broke above $71 a barrel following the attack, but as you can see here, falling here, now down nearly 4% as those concerns ease up over a possible disruption in the energy market. And on that note, energy producers that Many analysts were saying stand to benefit if there was a disruption in the transportation of oil. Marathon, Hess, and Pioneer all trading down as we watch oil prices move lower here. Becky, back to you.
All right, Seema, thank you very much. We begin with a Middle East crisis that appears to be pulling back from the brink. Overnight, Iran launched more than a dozen missiles at military bases housing U.S. troops in Iraq. Markets initially tanked on that news, but then recovered after Iran's foreign minister tweeted that the country was not seeking escalation or war. The rally picked up steam after the president addressed the nation here. He, too, eased some fears of further escalation. Eamon Javers is live at the White House. He's got the latest on this, and Eamon, it's good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too, Becky. One piece of information we're just getting in is that the White House now confirming the president spoke to Boris Johnson of the United Kingdom today by telephone. Not a whole lot of detail here from the White House about what they discussed other than the Middle East broadly, but you can presume that last night's military action by Iran was top of the list. And of course, we saw the president mentioning the UK, specifically hoping that the UK backs his approach to the Iranian nuclear deal going forward, and also the president requesting in his remarks here at the White House just a short time ago that American allies back him up in terms of NATO participation in an anti-Iranian effort. Not clear exactly what the president wants, but the one thing we did see from the president here at the White House, as I say, just a short time ago, is an emphasis on economic solutions here, not necessarily military ones. Here's what the president said.
As we continue to evaluate options in response to Iranian aggression, the United States will immediately impose additional punishing economic sanctions on the Iranian regime. These powerful sanctions will remain until Iran changes its behavior.
Now, Becky, clearly the United States already has punishing sanctions in place on the Iranians. That's part of what's driving the Iranian government calculus in all of this is how to get those sanctions lifted or at least eased in the short term. So I've asked the White House and the Treasury Department for details on what exactly it is that they're going to be sanctioning, given the high level of sanctions already in place. They say they may have additional details later this afternoon. As soon as we have those, we'll get them over to you, Becky.
All right, Eamon, thank you. We look forward to hearing more on that.
You bet.
In the meantime, will this sense of de-escalation last, or is this just the calm before the storm? Let's bring in Michael O'Hanlon. He's Senior Fellow and Director of Research and Foreign Policy at the Brookings Institution. And Paul Salem, who is President at the Middle East Institute. Gentlemen, good to see both of you. Let's look through what the president had to say today. There was something for everybody in there. He said, I'll never allow Iran to have nukes. Punishing sanctions are coming. We've got the best weapons, but we don't want to use them, and we want you to prosper. Michael, what's the important message? What did you take away from all of this?
Overall, Becky, I certainly liked the message compared to what it might otherwise have been. And I think it was the logical message when Iran signaled that it didn't want escalation itself by probably deliberately missing any targets yesterday that would have caused civilian or military casualties. So I think that it's the logical next step. And as you and Eamon just discussed, in terms of additional sanctions, I think that's more for show and rhetoric than anything else. There aren't that many more ways we, the United States, really can sanction Iran's economy, at least not that I can think of. We have such comprehensive sanctions already. So I saw this as about the kind of speech you would expect and hope for. It still leaves the question of what's the end game? How do we finally get out of this confrontation with Iran at a time when our demands have become so maximal and our constriction of their economy so severe? But for the short term, tactically, I think it's a de-escalation and a welcome one.
Well, Paul, let's give you the difficult question. How do we get out of this eventually? This is a short-term de-escalation. What's the longer term?
Well, first of all, we don't know if this is a longer-term de-escalation. To keep in mind, it's important to know that if Iran really intends to escalate against the U.S. In Iraq or in other arenas, it would logically want to signal de-escalation first. That's in order to cool down President Trump and minimize U.S. attention on what they're doing and try to minimize a massive response. Secondly, they definitely want to reestablish plausible deniability so that if they do something in the weeks or months ahead, and they will do it through proxy forces, they will say, we did our bit, previously, and this is not us. So it's hard to read exactly what's going on. To my mind, the Iranians still have two clear goals. They don't really pursue their emotions, they pursue their interests, and I think they have two clear ones. One is they're continuing to try to push the U.S. out of Iraq. That is a very critical play. They're using their political leverage, and they will up the security leverage through their proxies as well. And secondly, they have an interest in not helping Trump get reelected. That might be, as they've warned in previous days, attacks on embassies or bases elsewhere in the region or indeed in the world to give President Trump several Benghazis to deal with. So it's hard to say where we are. I think President Trump made the very correct statements. He's trying to de-escalate from his end. I think it's urgent that the U.S. engage right away with the Iraqi government, the Iraqi prime minister, because while killing Soleimani, we also greatly weakened our hand inside Iraq with the government and a part of public opinion. And we don't want, as a result of the killing of Soleimani, to be driven out of Iraq.
You know, Michael, that's a frightening thought. Are we looking at this too quickly and thinking that the de-escalation is here? The markets are up pretty significantly on this, but do you think that this is more of a head fake and then the Iraqis have more planned? Or the Iranians?
I see no reason for the markets to be happy. I mean, a sigh of relief is different from a celebration. I think that Paul's 100% right, and I would add a third Iranian objective, which is somehow escaping the sanctions that have been applied so mercilessly by President Trump. And, you know, quite effectively, I think Iran's GDP shrank 7% last year, if my latest information is correct. So there has to be some kind of an end game there, too. And probably the Iranian hope is that a Democrat would defeat President Trump in November and be more amenable either to rejoining the 2015 nuclear deal or to negotiating a sort of mild change in that agreement without invoking all the other requirements that Secretary Pompeo and President Trump have imposed on Iran if they ever want to sort of be reacquainted with the community of nations. So in the short term, the Iraqi government and our presence there is crucial, the relationship with the Iraqis. I think we have to have a quiet dialogue, a friendly dialogue with them about the kind of U.S. military posture in Iraq that could still be in both countries' interests. And so far, the president is off to a very bad start on that.
All right, gentlemen, thank you both very much. Michael O'Hanlon and Paul Salem. We've got a news alert in the bond market right now. 10-year notes up for auction. Rick Santelli's tracking the auction at the CME. And Rick, what are you seeing? What's demand?
You know, demand is straight up 1 Eastern, C minus, Charlie minus. Let's go through it. 24 billion reopened 10s. Really, it's 9-year, 10-month. It's the second addition to an issue that was primary issued in November. 1.869 was the yield at the Dutch auction. 1.86 was the high in the when issued market right up to the end. Higher yield, lower price right there. It definitely loses some markings with respect to its grade. 2.45 bid to cover about average. 55.2 on indirects, the weakest since May. 16.1, the one bright spot on direct bidders, and that was the second best of 2019, including, of course, this auction today. 28.7 is the percent primary dealers take. But considering the volatility and the fact that 170 yield was the low last night during a volatility period, it really wasn't a bad auction. Probably could have been even a little sloppier. Tomorrow will be 30 years, finishing off 78 billion in total supply. Becky, back to you.
All right, Rick, thank you very much. You know, you can call it the sigh of relief rally. The market shrugging off any geopolitical risks with stocks rallying today. Check it out. The S&P and the NASDAQ hitting all-time highs. The Dow is now up by almost 200 points, and that comes even when you've got Walgreens and Boeing, big losses there, shaving about 55 points off of the Dow. But are investors being too complacent here? Is there still real risk out there? Let's try and get some answers from Nancy Tengler. She is Chief Investment Officer at Lafler Tengler Investments. Also, Brian Belsky, who is Chief Investment Strategist at BMO Capital Markets. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
This is not the day I thought we'd be seeing today based on the actions of last night. You two caught off guard by this too? What do you think, Brian?
Oh, well, hi.
Hi.
You first.
No, I'm not. And the reason is that, Becky, our theme all along from a fundamental perspective is that U.S. is a home for stability, okay? And I think the academics have it wrong again. You know, academically, you'd say be buying bonds and buying gold and buying oil and all this. We've had the oil recovery in December. Now we're selling off a little bit of that because oil went up a little bit too much. Gold's bounced
a lot, though. I mean, you're talking about the lowest price we've seen in a month almost.
However, a month. But if you take a look at this last several years, oil's been in a big trading range, right? Yeah. And so the fundamentals of oil are still very much in place, meaning a lot of supply. The key thing is that stability from a fundamental perspective in terms of earnings. remain the strongest in the world here in the United States. But most importantly, think about this in terms of perspective on a short-term point. This is day 3 of trading really in 2020, right? The adults are back working, and after last weekend when it was really working. And so the U.S. outperformed dramatically the rest of the world, the majority of the rest of the world. Global allocators were misallocated last year and didn't own enough U.S. stocks, and now you're starting to see the money flow come back in. I think that has a lot to do with it. Nobody's really talking about it because we're so focused on headlines right now. But the key thing is that U.S. provides stability, and that trend's going to continue.
Although, Nancy, you've been long the stock market for a long time. You do have some concerns that we're due for a pullback at this point.
I think we are. I mean, I think this is that things have to get worse before they get better market. We need a correction. I hate saying that out loud, but we do. We need to see some pruning. And then I think we get another leg. I do think this is much more analogous to the 90s than it is to the 2000s. And I think we have a lot of room to run even still for many of the reasons Brian already mentioned. But additionally, the U.S. consumer, the jobs environment is healthy. Oil is range bound. We're now going to be energy independent in 2020. So that supply keeps the prices within a range that is good for the consumer. And, I think we're going to see a resurgence in CapEx spending.
Brian, you are not in a position where you think any of those trades, the traditional playbook we would think we'd be playing, would be working today. But what is working? What are you buying?
Well, we're overweight financials, communication services, discretionary, and tech. And so if you think about it, 3 out of those 4 sectors are really centered toward the consumer. The consumer is the strength of the economy, and that's not going to change. We don't see that. Now, per the point that was made is that this year's return structure is going to be very different than last year, right? And if you go back to the 90s, we wrote last year early that we thought 2019 was going to be this generation's 1995. That panned out. And we think, though, the next couple of years are going to be a little bit dicier because we actually are going to see, I think, CapEx growth. We are going to see GDP growth a little bit stronger than most people think. Then we get some sort of a correction. And then the last leg of our 20-year bull market call that we made a number of years ago will come in. So I still think that people are massively underweight U.S. stocks, Becky. And I think that you want to be in those areas with cash and that are centered toward the consumer and still in financials.
Nancy, you have the most interesting, bold move that I've seen all day. You've been buying shares of Boeing over the last few weeks.
Yes.
What made you make that decision, and what do you think, just given the headlines today?
So if you looked at the headlines, you would say Boeing should be a $200 stock. But the moat is very big around that company. And we actually...
In terms of there not being too many alternatives, and if you've bought a lot of Boeing planes, you're going to continue to buy Boeing planes?
And the backlog. And so we think they'll fix the MAX problem. I think the new CEO is coming in and doing, he hasn't officially started, but you can see his fingerprints on what has been going on. I think they're doing the right things. Unfortunately, Muhlenberg just didn't manage the crisis well, and he allowed it to get away from him, and to morph into something even bigger. So we think 3 years from now, if you've been accumulating the stock here, they will start growing the dividend again once they get through the cost structure issues. We think you'll be really happy you own Boeing.
All right. Nancy, Brian, good to see both of you. Thank you. All right, here's what else is ahead on the exchange today.
Coming up, former auto executive Carlos Ghosn speaks out very candidly. We'll look at what his chances are of coming out the winner in this international chase. Plus, there's a new player in the meatless wars, and it's coming into the game in full force with 50 new products. And the latest on the deadly Boeing crash overnight in Iran. This is The Exchange on CNBC.
This is Apple Card.
Imagine yourself in an unspoiled paradise, discovering the charms of a new city, or sampling street food with the locals. Fly from London to more than 160 destinations worldwide and make 2020 a year like never before with Qatar Airways, named world's best airline by Skytrax. Our incredible selection of special fares are available now. Book today at QatarAirways.com. Qatar Airways, going places together.
Smart Sports Wagering Talk is now on TuneIn. This is Brett Musburger. The Better Network is now on TuneIn. Search BETR. Be better informed. Be better prepared. And remember, cash and tickets is what it's all about.
Start hearing more of what you want.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations,
Live commercial-free news,
and every live NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL game.
Visit tunein.com/premium to upgrade.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn. We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour, but we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Welcome back, everybody. Let's get a quick check on oil prices right now. Sitting at session lows, you're looking at WTI down by about 5.25%. Kind of shocking given what's been happening in the Middle East. But the premium that had kind of built in over several days coming back out, and WTI below $60 a barrel. Also, a Boeing 737 passenger plane bound for Ukraine crashed in Iran last night, just minutes after takeoff, killing all 176 people on board. That plane was operated by Ukraine International Airlines, and it released a statement earlier today saying, given the crew's experience, error probability is minimal. Joining us right now with more on this is CNBC.com airlines reporter Leslie Josephs. And Leslie, this is one we've all been watching so closely today. Obviously a horrible story, so much confusion, and the idea that it was happening just hours after the missiles had been launched from Tehran into Iraq. Just a lot of things to kind of put together.
Yeah, it's a lot to put together. It's a lot to put together also with Boeing, and one thing to really emphasize is that this was not a MAX plane. Those planes, of course, have been grounded since March of last year, so this was not a MAX. However, this was a very new aircraft. This was about 3 years old. This airline has a pretty good safety record, so that's kind of odd, although things can happen. And there's still a lot that we don't know. But the pilots that I've talked to said that it's very strange that it would suddenly lose communication. State news agencies were talking about engine failure. Pilots are highly trained. This was a very experienced crew. To come in and not be able to sort of navigate your way out of that is very rare. And then just the abrupt nature in which it happened just it seems a little bit strange. But it is very early.
Fine in the beginning. It looked like it was taking
and it was
off
a normal
perfectly.
altitude, about 2,400 meters, 2 minutes after takeoff. That's pretty normal. And pilots are kind of, the ones I spoke to are a little bit confused at that you'd suddenly lose contact. Because even if you have engine failure and then you start to descend, you'd still be transmitting data. And that suddenly stopped. And that's a little bit strange.
Now, Iran has said that they've recovered the black box, but they will not be sharing, at least according to reports, they will not be sharing that box or that information with either American authorities or Boeing.
Yeah, so that further complicates things. Under international law for aviation, the country in which the accident occurred or the incident occurred, they're the ones who are going to be investigating it. And just given what relations are now with the U.S., they seem to be, like you said, frozen out.
Right. I want to thank you very much for joining us. It's good to see you, Leslie.
Thank you.
Thanks. When we come back, the meatless mania continues with a new player entering the game. The stock's been on a run in the last 3 months, so can this move keep the momentum going? We've got the name and a debate straight ahead. Plus, a new report shedding some light on some serious security flaws within popular video sharing app TikTok. We have the details coming up. The Exchange will be back in 2 minutes.
Deeper data at CNBC. November global air freight demand fell 1.1% from year-ago levels. It was the 13th consecutive month of year-over-year declines.
Boredom, fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. run. Mix it up, skip, run, skip, run. Give yourself a lift. Mix it up, lift. Mix it up, run, lift, splash, skip, lift, run. It's crunch time. Skip, mix it up, run. Mix it up. Add a boxing class. Skip, run, splash, skip, run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing in January. T's and C's apply. Run, mix it up, skip, mix it, run. Mix it.
Imagine yourself in an unspoiled paradise, discovering the charms of a new city, or sampling street food with the locals. Fly from London to more than 160 destinations worldwide and make 2020 a year like never before with Qatar Airways, named world's best airline by Skytrax. Our incredible selection of special fares are available now. Book today at QatarAirways.com. Qatar Airways, going places together.
Want TuneIn to remind you when the big NFL game is about to get underway? Be sure notifications are allowed on your phone and search NFL on the TuneIn app. Find the game you want to hear under events and tap Notify Me. We'll let you know exactly when it's time to listen in for kickoff.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour, but we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
Pascal gobbles up the rebound and slams it down.
Get your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back, deep three is up and in.
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Welcome back to the exchange. Let's get you caught up with some of the movers this hour. Shares of Smile Direct Club up 10%. The company announcing its first Asia location with an expansion into Hong Kong. This follows news on Monday that Smile Direct Club will be offering its products at Walmart. And shares of Lennar had been up as much as 5%. Now they're higher by about 1% after beating on the top and the bottom line. New orders were up 23% on both a dollar and a volume basis compared to a year ago. Also, shares of Luckin Coffee up more than 8% today as the company expands its footprint in China with vending machines, further increasing its dominance over Starbucks in that country. A nice recovery for the stock from yesterday when it fell on a secondary offering of 12 million American depository shares. Let's get over to Sue Herrera. She's got a CNBC News update. Hi, Sue.
Hello, Becky. Great to see you. Hello, everyone. Here's what's happening at this hour. Pope Francis asking for prayers as firefighters battle Australia's deadly wildfires. It came during an unscripted moment with his congregation in Vatican City. The fires in Australia have killed 26 people and destroyed 2,000 homes. Record heat and drought are fueling the flames. Washington state is having the opposite problem. Too much rain is creating mudslides in the western portion of that state. The mudslides are damaging roads and making them impassable. Harvey Weinstein back in court for day 2 of jury selection. If the 67-year-old former movie producer is convicted of sexual misconduct and rape, he could get life in prison. And progress on the fight against cancer. The American Cancer Society is reporting the largest one-year drop in the death rate on record. It fell 2.2% from 2016 to 2017 versus the average rate of about 1.5%. Researchers are citing cancer treatment advancements and also better diagnostic scanning for the decline. A little bit of good news, Becky, to end the news update. Back to you.
You know, that's the best news I've heard all day, Sue.
Right.
We'll take it. Thank you, Sue Herrera. All right, folks, here's what else is coming up today on the exchange.
Ahead, it was the Miracle on 34th Street from Macy's during the holidays. Meatless Mania continues as Kroger jumps into the game. The stars are aligning for Constellation Brands and media mogul Jeff Katzenberg on his new venture. It's all coming up on the exchange.
See how to forecast anything. Imagine yourself in an unspoiled paradise, discovering the charms of a new city, or sampling street food with the locals. Fly from London to more than 160 destinations worldwide and make 2020 a year like never before with Qatar Airways, named world's best airline by Skytrax. Our incredible selection of special fares are available now. Book today at QatarAirways.com. Qatar Airways, going places together.
Rainy, 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 rainy.
Sergey, why are you in such good mood?
It's raining.
And?
Rain means we take mere pups to cinema. And cinema means they'll be entertained.
Ah, and entertained means they're also quiet for a couple of hours. Oh, let's go. Enjoy 2-for-1 cinema tickets from Meerkat Movies when you buy through Compare the Market.
Qualifying purchases Tuesdays or Wednesdays. Participating cinemas. 2 standard tickets only. Cheapest ticket free. T's and C's apply.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations. You'll also get live commercial-free news, plus live play-by-play games from NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
The NBA is on TuneIn Premium.
Pointer by Anthony Davis. It's good!
Each week, TuneIn picks an NBA game you just can't miss. 2 of the top teams in the Western Conference go head-to-head. This Sunday, the Clippers are at the Nuggets. Tip-off is at 8 p.m. Eastern.
3 ball on the way. He got it to go! 3 from the angle. Got it!
Search NBA to follow your favorite NBA team today.
Smart Sports Wagering Talk is now on TuneIn. This is Brett Musburger. The Better Network is now on TuneIn. Search BETR. Be better informed. Be better prepared. And remember, cash and tickets is what it's all about.
You might already know that TuneIn allows you to listen to all the pro sports leagues wherever you go. But did you know TuneIn is also home to the wide world of college sports?
Open 3, DeAndre Hunter got it! Handoff Carruthers, big hole right side. He leaps and he surges in. Touchdown!
From live college football, basketball, and baseball games to podcasts and coaches shows fueling your love for the game in your school. And the best part is, it's all free. Search college sports to find your team or league.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour. But we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
All right, here we go. It's time for Rapid Fire. We're going to get you caught up on a few stories that should be on your radar. Joining us to break down the headlines, Robert Frank, Kate Rogers, and Frank Holland. Good to see you guys. Ready to go?
Yep.
Yes. All right. First up, not much of a holiday miracle for Macy's today. The retailer actually saw same-store sales decline by 0.6% during the holiday season. And yet, that's good enough for Wall Street, especially since analysts expected sales to drop by much, much more. The company also announcing a spate of store closures. The stock kind of bouncing around today. Right now, it's up by 2.5%. The share is getting a small boost, but off of session highs. That stock down nearly 42% over the last 12 months. This was a rough year for the retailers. They knew they were going to have a shorter calendar, but especially for the mall-based retailers and especially the department stores within that. What do you think?
Only in this retail environment is a sales decline of 0.6% great news for Macy's. I mean, I was at Target on Black Friday, which is obviously a very different type of retailer, but I'll have to say, I mean, even in that store, there weren't a ton of people in there shopping. It's just like the entire landscape has completely shifted. These big box, the mall retailers rather, are forced to have to do all these steep discounts.
Although I have to say, Black Friday is not the measure that it used to be, because now they open up on Thanksgiving, they run all the way through. It's not this time. You don't see it anymore where people are rushing in the doors trying to.
Kate makes an important point. We're looking at the top line, lack of disappointment, but the bottom line is going to really be where it hurts, because you saw all the discounting. Right. I mean, I was at a mall in Florida and there was like racks of 40 to 60% off right after Christmas, and it was just tons of this stuff. And so what the margin looks like at the end of the quarter, that's going to be the question for Macy's. Plus, they've still got over 680 stores after closing 28 and one Bloomingdale. So I think they're still way overstored.
Incredible shrinking store footprint story.
A double-pronged issue. Number one, shorter window between Thanksgiving or Black Friday and Christmas this year, so people had less time to shop. Also, we're all kind of enamored by e-commerce, but I actually got a great stat from CBRE. 85% of the people shopping in malls this holiday season, they were Gen Z. And apparently Gen Z people, they like to go to the mall.
Yeah.
And so there is some hope going forward.
Mall rats are back? Are you kidding me? I thought we were done with that for good.
Well, apparently not. And I think a lot of stores are actually gearing their sales towards people buying online and actually picking up in the store. You get that second bite of the apple, potentially.
That was going on at Target. I mean, I think they doubled the amount of people they had working in fulfillment this year.
Well, they've done a great job.
Yeah, because they know everyone's ordering online and picking up, and that was a really busy part of the store. So it's just interesting to see
Target and Walmart both have owned that space.
Yeah.
All right, next up, Kroger is doubling down on meatless mania. The supermarket operator is launching a private label plant-based meat line. It plans to offer 50 new products under its Simple Truth Emerge brand. This comes as Beyond Meat and McDonald's announced that they're going to be expanding the PLT burger. And according to Reuters, Impossible Foods has stepped away from a coveted deal to supply the fast food giant. Kate, this is your wheelhouse. PLT, plant, lettuce, and tomato. That's what we're talking about?
Yes. And so the big question for me watching this space is, when does McDonald's get in on this in a really big way? And which company does it team up with? Because it's going to have a huge supply chain to be able to service McDonald's more than 14,000 U.S.-based stores. So they're doing this test in Canada. Impossible works with Burger King. They have half the amount of locations that McDonald's has in the United States. And what happened with Reuters yesterday is interesting. The story comes out that says that Impossible's kind of backed away from talks with McDonald's. Then they put out a statement.
They're backing away from the backing away.
Yeah, and they're saying, listen, we're open to talking to any potential future partners at any time. But their CEO, Pat Brown, said it would be silly for us to try and go after McDonald's right now because we don't have the supply chain. So, these wars are going to continue to go on. Beyond, analysts say, is the better positioned company to work with McDonald's on a big rollout.
And it's interesting they're having production problems keeping up with the demand, given that my fear going into this whole craze over fake meat was, is this really a commodity business? I mean, how do you decommoditize a business where Tyson Foods is in it, Nestle's coming in it, Kroger's in it, all these Albertsons in it, all these people are coming in, Whole Foods already has products out there. How can you say we're Impossible, we're Beyond, therefore we're different from all the other cheaper products out there?
The demand has been amazing.
It is.
It's been something to kind of watch and go through with it.
Demand's amazing, and also the investor interest is amazing. This has been one of the best IPOs of 2019. I was actually there with the CEO, and he talked about he hoped that shareholders would become people that bought the products, and people that bought the products would become shareholders. So from that first day, I think that you might have had a sign that maybe this could take off. But my thing is, General Mills is actually an early investor into Beyond. So they have the capacity, they have the supply chain. So once you saw this starting to take off, why not partner with them? And now they're kind of at a crossroads where they could have a great partnership with McDonald's, but they just don't have the capacity.
One more thought. All of this buzz, it just creates excitement about if and when this happens, right? So if they go full scale right away with every restaurant company that wants to work with them, that kind of, deflates their own hype, I think, in some way, too. So I think the supply chain matters, but I also think, they're strategic. They know what they're doing.
I just want to know how they come up with 50 new products. Are you kidding me? That's like Bubba Gump.
Yeah, what is in it? What does that taste like? I have no idea. Yeah.
All right, after all that talk about alternative meat, maybe a beer. Shares of Constellation Brands bubbling up just over 3% after the company reported a beat on its top and its bottom lines, and it was raising its full-year guidance for 2020. Check out the stock today. It's about 4.4% increase. Beer sales actually popped more than 8% thanks to the brewer's robust portfolio, but other divisions lagged. Frank, this reminds me of the mall story you just talked about. I thought beer was a declining asset and that millennials didn't want to drink these beers. Not the case?
I think that's the overall thought there, but Corona is actually a very popular brand. So is Modelo. Modelo is actually on pace to be the 4th most popular beer brand in the U.S. So right there, they have really strong fundamentals in their core business. But I think you also have to look at Constellation as a growth business. They're deeply invested in cannabis, and you have to decide whether you think cannabis is at its lows or quote-unquote highs. Just no pun intended. But they also have a deal to acquire a smaller cap producer based in the U.S. I'm not going to name it because it's such a small cap, but they already have a vertical integration in place. Once U.S. legalization happens, or if it happens, they have the right to buy this other producer, so they'll be able to just step right into the U.S. market. Also, they're stepping into seltzer, which grew 200% last year. They're going to call it Corona Seltzer, so people are going to see Corona beer, Corona Seltzer.
They're calling it Corona Seltzer?
Corona Seltzer.
Wait, there's no alcohol in it, though?
No, there's
there
actually
is.
it's
It's like
like
the
hard
spiked
seltzer. I'm
seltzer.
sorry.
That to me,
So hard seltzer grew 200%.
That to me is stupid, though. You have a chance to create a brand new, I mean, all these brand new seltzer brands, and then call it a beer brand. I mean, this is exactly the consumer that's buying spiked seltzers getting away from beer, and then you're calling it Corona. That seems to be.
But isn't there kind of a stigma to hard seltzer? I mean,
that's right.
I feel like people are kind of turned off by the idea of drinking hard seltzer, even if they enjoy the taste of hard seltzer.
Yeah, I avoided that whole trend this summer. Stick with my rosé.
Perfect example.
By the way, we should mention Constellation Brands CEO Bill Newland's going to be sitting down with Jim Cramer tonight. You can tune into Mad Money at 6 p.m. to watch that. And guys, I'm going to call an audible here on Rapid Fire and change up our last topic. We're going to talk Grubhub instead of TikTok, because Grubhub shares, if you've been watching this today, that stock is surging right now on a report that the company has hired financial advisors to explore strategic options, including a possible sale. Check it out. Grubhub shares up by 17% today, but they're still down about 30% for the year. Shares of Uber are also moving higher on this news. Investors may be betting on consolidation in the food delivery industry. What do you think, guys?
I mean, the Uber move was really interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, we were watching this happen. It got basically a 5% pop almost as this news came out about
maybe they
Grubhub.
won't get crushed by competition if this happens?
Exactly. There are so many, we talk about this all the time, so many players in this space. The competition is hurting all of the delivery companies. It's also hurting some of the food carriers that are working with these, because, you know, you used to be able to just get pizza delivered. Now you can get everything delivered. What is interesting is that I've heard from Rich Allison, the CEO of Domino's, obviously, that he thinks some type of, you know, reckoning of sorts is going to come to this industry because there are just too many players and they're losing a lot of money. It's not sustainable. We also heard from the Chipotle CEO, Brian Nichols, saying that he thinks the most profitable players will obviously be the ones that last longer. So I think there is clearly some consolidation coming because there are too many of these companies. And Matt Maloney, the CEO of Grubhub, said too many promiscuous diners.
Yeah,
this isn't a surprise.
I was surprised by the Uber move up, too, because you take one giant money-losing company with a smaller money-losing company, and somehow you're going to get a profit there. I mean, but to your point...
It makes sense if you can stop beating each other's brains.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's right. But that's a big assumption that we have yet to see, for instance, with Lyft and Uber, or all these companies that said, okay, we're close to that point, but we haven't really seen it yet. But Grubhub is the biggest in an industry that just economically hasn't made sense yet.
I mean, to me, it makes sense for them to be acquired or try to buy somebody else if they could. I mean, Grubhub's grown single digits over the last year.
Who else could buy them, though?
Well, DoorDash is growing 100%. So they have someone that's really on their heels, maybe even overtaking them coming up. Maybe Uber.
They're going to get SoftBank in here. Right?
Yeah, right. They'll buy anything.
Yeah, exactly.
They're losing money on one of those.
All right, guys, thank you very much. Good to see all three of you. We got Robert, Kate, and Frank. And folks, former Nissan chairman Carlos Ghosn saying he did not escape justice. He says he fled injustice at his first public appearance since escaping Japan. What else Ghosn had to say is coming up next.
Still peeling eggs the old-fashioned way?
Martin here loves being his own boss, but staying on top of all the tax rules used to drive him up the stud wall. This 31st of January self-assessment deadline, however, Martin won't be hitting the roof. Just a few buttons. He's using QuickBooks Self-Employed to make sure his tax bill is all above board. It tracks income and expenses, so he always knows what he owes. You could say he smashed it.
Visit quickbooks.co.uk for details. Intuit QuickBooks.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn. We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour, but we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
Welcome back to the Exchange. Former Nissan chairman Carlos Ghosn speaking for more than 2 hours at a news conference in Lebanon today. These were his first public appearance and first comments since his escape from Japan last week. Phil LeBeau joins us right now with more on what he had to say. And Phil, good luck trying to cap that into a quick hit.
Okay, start the stopwatch now. Look, he came out firing. We knew he would. And right off the bat, he made it clear. He believes that he has to do this in order to clear his name.
I want justice because justice is the only way I'm going to establish my reputation, and the only way what I've done during my life is going to be recognized to its value. And if I don't get it in Japan, I'm going to get it somewhere else.
Oh, and he plans to keep on talking, including more next week, is what he is saying. He blamed Nissan executives for setting him up today. He showed documents that basically, he says, shows compensation was approved by the Nissan board, and he says he is willing to stand trial if he can get a fair trial.
You can expect me in the next weeks to take some initiative to tell you how I'm going to clear my name, what kind of forum I'm going to be used to make sure that all the evidence are going to come to the table and that everything I've done be restored.
Watching his press conference very intently, a lot of people in Japan, including investigators. Earlier today, the police raided the office of Carlos Ghosn's lawyer in Tokyo. The prosecutors, after the press conference, said that Carlos Ghosn failed to justify his acts. Those acts meaning escaping, being on the lam, jumping bail, whatever you want to call it, Becky. Carlos Ghosn did not go into detail about that today. Not a surprise. We knew going in that he would not talk about who helped him, how he put this plan together, because that is one of the primary questions. Really, it is the primary question that people have right now.
Phil, what was the most surprising thing to you? I mean, if we've been following the story pretty closely, so much of it did not surprise me, but there were some new details there as well.
Well, I thought the most interesting thing is he said, look, they approved my compensation, of which he is accused of not reporting it. He goes, I never received it. So they're accusing me of something and like I'm stealing money here, but I did not receive this compensation. That was one aspect that I think people were a little bit surprised to hear about. The other thing that came up is he talked about, before his arrest, conversations he had with Fiat Chrysler about Fiat Chrysler joining Renault, Nissan, and Mitsubishi. But obviously, he was detained. Once that happened, those talks were off the board.
Right. Plus, he said they spent $200 million trying to smear him for taking what they were saying was $14 million that he said he never got.
Yes.
A lot to look through.
And Becky, we haven't really heard anything from Nissan. Don't be surprised if Nissan basically lets the Japanese authorities speak for them.
Okay. Phil, thank you very much. For more on Ghosn's legal predicament, I'm joined right now by Danny Savalos. He is co-founder and attorney for Savalos and Wong and a legal analyst for NBC News and MSNBC. And Danny, thanks for being here.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
So now what?
Now what?
What happens?
Well, Interpol has submitted what's called a red notice. It's not a warrant. It's just a notice to a country that you have somebody who is a fugitive from justice, either a fugitive or even an escaped prisoner. Now, Carlos Ghosn has not been tried yet. He's not under a sentence. He is just a fugitive awaiting trial. And so Lebanon has some tough choices to make in the coming weeks and months about what to do with this person, this fugitive,
you don't
in
think
their borders.
Lebanon is actually going to do anything? There's no extradition treaty with Japan, and they've already seemed to be saying that they are standing by him. In fact, Carlos Ghosn said today, as part of his entire situation, he was naming names from Japanese companies, from people he thought very personally sold him out. He didn't name anyone in government because he didn't want to put the Lebanese government in a more uncomfortable position than he's already put them in.
That's exactly right. Ghosn's view of this case, and this was confirmed today, is that this was an internal investigation over at Nissan that was then handed off to authorities. It's basically a Nissan internal squabble that was pushed off, and law enforcement was brought in to make that a legal criminal problem for Ghosn. That's the way he's viewed this case from the outset. And the argument about his compensation is that there's a Japanese rule that limits the compensation of an executive and requires it to be disclosed. The argument there is that he was getting this deferred package, this deferred compensation, totally normal here in the States, but in Japan, a lot more rules about disclosure. He says these were just negotiations. They were not an actual deal for me to get this deferred compensation.
You know, he was able to make his point very effectively today in terms of saying, look, if you are brought charges, a prosecutor brings charges against you, there's a 99.4% conviction rate. That seems crazy. His point was it's probably even higher for foreigners. There is no way to get a fair trial, he thinks, there. His comments and his predicament have brought a lot of light into the justice system in Japan. Are there changes underway there, or forget it, this is the way that the Japanese do it?
Not only are there changes, there have been changes over the past decades and even the past century. But the reality is Japan still has a over 99% conviction rate. Some of that can be explained by the fact that they don't have plea bargaining for the most part. So a prosecutor, when they take a case on, they better be sure they can win.
It's a higher conviction rate than you have in Russia.
Well, wait a second. Here in the United States, in federal court, where I practice frequently, there's an over 90% conviction rate, and more particularly so with white-collar crimes like this. That's exactly what this is. Now, Japan...
So you don't think there's anything fishy with the 99.4% conviction rate?
Oh, I'm not saying that at all. As a criminal defense attorney, I'm not particularly fond of our 90+% rate here in the United States, but a 99.9% conviction rate, that extra 10% is a significant difference. It means you have virtually 0.0 chance of escaping conviction in Japan. So that is definitely something to be concerned with. They only shifted to the adversarial system in the last century or so. This is an ever-changing system with a lot of tradition and focus on prosecutors working hand-in-hand with judges and criminal defense attorneys playing a very reduced role. In fact, they often don't appear at interrogations.
Carlos Ghosn said that happened. He was interrogated for a long time without any of his lawyers present.
Exactly right. And they can be held for 23 days. I mean, these are the kinds of protections that we have here in the United States where that would never happen. So while, we have a similar conviction rate in the sense that 90% is pretty darn high, 99.9%, and some of the other absence of safeguards procedurally make Japan somewhere that really could improve their system.
Danny, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Danny Savalas. Still ahead, the streaming landscape is more crowded than ever, and there's about to be another player entering the fray. Former DreamWorks CEO Jeffrey Katzenberg and former HP Enterprise CEO Meg Whitman will join us to discuss their latest venture. That's next.
Along the goal line, scores! It tucks it home!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
Here's Pietrangelo, he scores!
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium.
Gonna move, hit a shot, he scores!
From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Want TuneIn to remind you when the big NFL game is about to get underway? Be sure notifications are allowed on your phone and search NFL on the TuneIn app. Find the game you want to hear under events and tap Notify Me. We'll let you know exactly when it's time to listen in for kickoff.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour. But we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted!
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown to Kansas.
Search NFL today.
Hello, I'm Nat Coombs from ESPN's The Nat Coombs Show, which admittedly is 1 out of 10 for original podcast name, but 10 out of 10 for NFL chat. Every week, we're dropping 4 episodes with an all-pro lineup of terrific guests, journalists, comedians, players, coaches, you name it, all getting you up to speed with everything gridiron. The Nat Coombs Show, American football, British accent. add to your favorites, and listen on TuneIn.
Welcome back to The Exchange. The field of streaming services is already a crowded one, and there is another player that's set to hit the scene in April. Quibi, which is short for Quick Bites, aims to make big stories into small episodes and only for mobile devices. Julia Boorstin is at the Consumer Electronics Show, and she's joined in a first on CNBC by the founder of Quibi, Jeffrey Katzenberg, and CEO Meg Whitman. Julia.
Thanks so much, Becky. And Jeffrey Katzenberg and Meg Whitman, thank you so much for joining us fresh off the stage where you really gave us a look at Quibi for the very first time. You announced this initiative, this new company, 2 years ago almost, in March 2018. And since then, the streaming landscape has changed so dramatically. Just in November, we had the launch of Disney Plus and Apple TV Plus, both of which people are definitely watching on their mobile devices. How do you think about competing in this newly crowded landscape?
Well, the reason that we're at CES is there's a long history in Hollywood of technology creating new ways for storytellers to tell their stories. I mean, think about it. The moving picture technology, before that, it was just live theater. And then that created a whole industry. Then television was an entirely new technology, and the storytelling community created new stories. So what we announced today at CES is a new technology platform that is designed to make viewing on your phone a completely new, unique experience. And we have been embraced by the creators in Hollywood, and we're super excited. And we showed some clips of our, first shows there today that people saw for the very first time. And it's really differentiated and breakthrough.
Differentiated in that the format really, and we're showing some of the clips where the shot changes when you change it from horizontal to vertical. But people are already watching a lot of video on their mobile devices, and a lot of new ad-supported services are getting traction. We're going to have an ad-supported Peacock version launch soon. Do you feel pressure to launch a free ad-supported version, just as Peacock, which is also launching in April, is going to have a free ad-supported version?
I think this is really is apples and oranges here. All of these things that have happened up till now are battling for the TV set. And actually, less than 10% of Netflix viewing is on a telephone. So this isn't where people are watching all of this amazing new video today and the success that Disney is having and Apple is having. It's fantastic. It's actually not what we're doing. What we're doing is creating, with this amazing new technology, in the hands of storytellers, a new form of storytelling on a device, in a mobile device, in a quality way that people have not seen before. And it is the combination of these clips that you're watching right now, which were shot by some of the best filmmakers in Hollywood, and telling stories in a way that's never happened before.
So $5 a month with ads, $8 a month without ads. And this is going to be launching in April. And I guess the question is, you may not be competing with Netflix or Disney Plus because people may be watching those more on their TV screens, but you are competing for the amount of money people spend on entertainment, and you are competing for people's time. So how do you think about approaching that competitive landscape, whether you're competing with Instagram or people going out to the movies?
Well, I think it's interesting. We certainly are competing for entertainment dollars. There's no question about that, and we have to prove that we've got something special. But our use case is different than the big streamers. Our use case, we believe, is 7 in the morning till 7 at night when you're on the go, you're commuting, you're waiting at a doctor's office, you're waiting for friends to join you for lunch, you're waiting for a meeting to begin. And in that case, today, consumers are watching nearly 80 minutes of video today on their phone, up from 6 minutes in 2012. And we think that only gets bigger because of 5G and because what we're doing. So we think we're growing a whole new category. Maybe we'll take a little share from what people are doing on their phones during the day. But actually, I think we're creating an entirely new category of entertainment for mobile.
Disney Plus announced 10 million signups in its first day. I know you're partnered with T-Mobile for your launch. How many signups do you expect in the first month, in the first year?
So, listen, we are expecting quite a different ramp because we are an unknown brand. People don't know what Quibi is. It's a different use case. Disney was a 100-year-old brand that everyone knew. And, it's interesting being a newcomer to Hollywood. Everyone's focused on the movie launch, the first weekend. I'm focused on building a long-term growth vehicle that is a new consumer service. So we think our track record, our subscriber acquisition will be more gradual, and we'll measure our success at the end of year one.
And do you expect to do more partnerships to be bundled into other services similar to what you're doing with T-Mobile?
Well, where we're going to start, of course, is T-Mobile, and we think they are a perfect fit. As Mike Seifert said on stage today, they are a perfect fit for Quibi, and he thinks we're a perfect fit for T-Mobile. So, and then we'll be doing our own digital advertising on the 4 major, social network platforms. We're doing television advertising, out-of-home advertising, and of course, PR and communications. And social is going to be so important for us. And our stars, of course, have very big social followings.
Just a quick final question, because we're out of time. You have a lot of big partners. You're partnered with Google on the back-end distribution. Have you discussed selling to any of these big media and tech partners?
We haven't even launched yet, Julia. No, I think what we'd like to do, we'd like to build.
We're operators. We're entrepreneurs. We didn't build to sell. We built for success.
Well, certainly a lot of exciting things happening in the space, both in terms of consolidation and in terms of streaming applications launching. Meg Whitman, Jeffrey Katzenberg, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to checking out the app when it launches on April 6th. Thanks so much, guys. Back over to you.
Julia, thank you very much. All right, retailers go high tech. We've got a look at Walmart's new AlphaBot. It's helping to make the company deliver groceries to you faster. The exchange will be right back.
Okay. Imagine yourself in an unspoiled paradise, discovering the charms of a new city, or sampling street food with the locals. Fly from London to more than 160 destinations worldwide and make 2020 a year like never before with Qatar Airways, named world's best airline by Skytrax. Our incredible selection of special fares are available now. Book today at QatarAirways.com. Qatar Airways, going places together.
This is a live message from the Survivalist Network. There are reports of an impending zombie apocalypse reaching London. But don't panic. Our intel shows that for £199 a month with 0% APR representative, you can locally access the Toyota Hilux Invincible, the only vehicle with the build strength to withstand savage hordes of the undead. Once inside your Toyota Hilux, stay on this frequency for updates. You'll be fine.
0% APR representative on new sales of Hilux Invincible over 42 months. £199 per month. Customer deposit of £10,246 when financed through Access Toyota by 31st March 2020. £12,525 optional final payment. Subject status to over 18s. Indemnities may be required. Conditions apply. Toyota Financial Services.
Next time you look up at the stars, think about this.
Inside you are the remains of a stellar explosion. You are made of stardust. And without the stars, there wouldn't be us.
I'm Guy Raj, the wonders of the universe and the people who still look up every night. Next time on the TED Radio Hour from NPR. You can subscribe to the TED Radio Hour on TuneIn.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour, but we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? We've got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to every NFL game live as it's happening.
LaShawn McCoy has an opening on the right side, punches into the end zone for the touchdown.
Or catch it later on demand.
Offset backs behind Mahomes. The give is to Williams. Starts right, cuts it back to the left, and blows into the end zone for the touchdown.
You call the plays. Follow the NFL anytime, anywhere, all season long with TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Welcome back, everybody. More proof that the grocery wars are going high tech. Walmart's been testing a platform that's named AlphaBot at one of its supercenters in Salem, New Hampshire since last year. The fulfillment system looks like a mini warehouse. It uses autonomous carts to try and retrieve shelf food, refrigerated items, and frozen goods that consumers order. order online. Once the Alpha bot has requested items and has them in hand, the system then sends the cart to a designated workstation where an employee checks the order for accuracy. The Alpha bot cuts the time compared to the traditional picking done by humans. Walmart says its employees will still continue to pick fresh produce by hand, but you see what's coming. That does it for us on the exchange. Power Lunch starts right now.
Becky, thank you very much. Great to see you in the afternoon. Welcome, everybody. I'm Tyler Mathisen. Here's what's new at 2 on Power Lunch. Stocks staging a major rebound from the overnight drop after Iran retaliated against the United States by sending missiles into military bases in Iraq. But we will tell you how to protect your portfolio no matter what happens next. Plus, moments after the attacks, a deadly Boeing plane crash in Iran killed everyone on board. On reports of a technical glitch, we will have the details on that story. And later, former Nissan head Carlos Ghosn breaking his silence, and boy did he ever, in an animated press conference that went on and on and on. And he did it after a James Bond-like escape from Japan. We'll tell you what he said that has everyone talking. What didn't he say? Not much about his escape, by the way. Power Lunch starts right now.
And welcome to Power Lunch. I'm Contessa Brewer. It is hard to believe stocks were down 400 points overnight because right now they are surging. The Dow up nearly 200 points, as you can see, up more than 0.5%. The S&P and the NASDAQ also in the green and notching new records. Some of the names across the board here hitting an all-time high. We've got Google. We've got MasterCard. We have Lowe's up more than 2%. Tyler?
All right, Contessa, Iran launching a missile attack overnight in retaliation for the killing of Major General Qasem Soleimani. It targeted 2 air bases in Iraq that house U.S. troops, among other individuals. There are no reported U.S. casualties. An Iranian foreign minister tweeting they do not seek escalation or war. President Trump echoing that sentiment earlier. So let's go to Eamon Javers for the details. The president says that Iran appears to be standing down. Eamon?
Yeah, that's right. Tyler, you mentioned the 2 key points that the president made in his speech here at the White House. 1, no American or Iraqi casualties in that Iranian missile strike last night. And then 2, that the Iranian military apparatus appears to be standing down here. So you'd think that the time of danger here may have passed, at least in the short run. So that, obviously, for the markets, very good news. The president also used the opportunity here at the White House to call on NATO to step up and be more involved in the anti-Iranian effort that he is trying to lead here, and also had this to say to nations around the world.
Iran must abandon its nuclear ambitions and end its support for terrorism. The time has come for the United Kingdom, Germany, France, Russia, and China to recognize this reality. They must now break away from the remnants of the Iran deal.
So that raises the question, what exactly does the president want NATO to do here? Is he talking boots on the ground? What role does he see for the military alliance against Iran? What I'm hearing here inside the building is that the president is not necessarily calling for any specific commitment by any NATO allies, but that he would like them all to step up, whether that's in terms of troops, whether that's in terms of financing, whether that's in terms of equipment. The president, I'm told, is willing to leave that up to the individual NATO allies, but he does want more of a commitment. The president also making a comment about new sanctions on the Iranians. A big question there is what is left to sanction in the Iranian economy, given that there are such heavy sanctions already in place by the United States. One thing to think about there, Tyler, are secondary sanctions. One possibility here is that the United States could go after those countries that have been doing business with Iran and sanction them, as opposed to just putting more sanctions on the already heavily sanctioned Iranian economy, Tyler.
All right, thank you very much. Eamon Javers on the North Lawn.
As for the markets, the Dow trading higher by about 200 points right now. The Nasdaq, the S&P 500 hitting records, just shaking off any fears over Iran's retaliation that sunk futures last night. Bob Bassani's at the New York Stock Exchange with more on, why the markets don't really seem that concerned, Bob.
Well, there's some good reasons for that, but what a wild ride it was. So remember, the Iranian crisis stopped the rally for 4 days, and that's now over. But what a ride. This is a 50-point move in the S&P in 1 hour last night, and this is what happens when you have movement on incomplete information. The algos sold on incomplete information, and when everyone realized they didn't have the right information, the complete information, complete round trip, 500 points on the Dow, 50 in the S&P 500 in about 2.5 hours. Quite a move on up. We had a whole month and a half worth of volatility in an hour and a half. Crude, same situation. This is crude for the month here, 62 to 65 and all the way back to 62. And below that, now you can see we had very weak crude inventory levels this morning as well, adding to it. So we're back down to where we were. I think the important thing now, the market's going to start looking at earnings and sales. And I like what I'm hearing this morning. Walgreens was a little bit of a disappointment. They did affirm the full year. Constellation, better than expected. Lennar, big home builders, good numbers, good internal metrics for growth. Macy's, okay, negative comps, but better than expected overall. And Samsung gave some preliminary commentary on their cash flow numbers that were better than expected. This is exactly what you want to hear. You want to be a little bit better than feared for earnings season for the fourth quarter here. Some new highs here, the usual suspects. Apple's back, so is Google, Facebook, Adobe. These are your big tech names. These are often on the new high list. Some of the discounters also back on the new high list. We got about 200 on the New York Stock Exchange, but Ross Stores, TGX, the discounters, Lowe's, even SD Lauder. Talk a little bit more about some other big names that are at new highs in the next hour or so. But overall here, markets are sitting in a very good position. Back to you. All right, Bob, thank you very much. So the markets do clearly believe that statements from both President Trump and the Iranians that they are trying to de-escalate the situation. But are investors breathing a sigh of relief too soon? With us now is Michael Rubin, a Mideast expert and resident scholar at the American Enterprise Institute. Michael, welcome. Good to have you with us. To that point, the Iranian foreign minister said that this concludes the proportionate response phase of our proportionate response to what happened earlier last week with respect to General Soleimani. But do you think that they are done exacting a price for what happened?
I think they're done in the short term, but let's also keep in mind that the Iranian foreign minister has about as much control over Iranian security policy as the municipal dog catcher does. The decision to retaliate or not is going to be taken in the office of the supreme leader and among the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Generally speaking, what made last night's missile strikes interesting was usually when the Iranians retaliate, they want plausible deniability. This had the return address being Iran. There is no plausible deniability. When the real retaliation comes, and I think that will come months away, then I expect the Iranians aren't going to claim responsibility.
It will come months away. It may not be traceable back to the state. It could be some proxy. What form do you expect that retaliation to take?
Well, keep in mind that as we consider all the possible scenarios, it really highlights the fact that both the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and their proxy, Lebanese Hezbollah, truly have global reach. In 1994, Hezbollah struck in South America. Hezbollah networks are very much at play in Western Africa. Simply put, I would be much more worried being a diplomat in Bangkok, Thailand, than in Beirut. Because usually when this sort of retaliation comes, it's where we're most soft and where we least expect it.
Okay, we already are hearing the Ayatollah continuing to say that American presence in the region is unacceptable, that they are a corrupt influence. And so he's not backing up what the foreign minister of Iran is saying at all about this concluding the response. Given that, what should American companies who have a presence in the region be thinking about protecting their facilities and protecting their people?
Well, I mean, certainly anyone who's operating in the region should be in close coordination with the security forces which are operating in the countries in which they're working. So if you're in the Emirates, you should be in close contact with the Emiratis. One thing that can be said for many of the Arab regimes is that they have very professional, very competent security forces, and I'm sure they are going to be keeping track of any potential hostile Iranian actions.
How do you see right now the back and forth that has gone from Iraq and the United States in terms of threatened sanctions there and whether they're cooperating with the Iranians? What happens in some of these other players in the Middle East?
Well, the biggest concern among many of the states in the Middle East, Iraq accepted, is that the Americans might actually go in halfway, stir in the hornet's nest, and then leave them around to clean up the mess. With regard to Iraq, the situation's more complicated, all the more so after last night, because remember, these bases which the Iranians hit with ballistic missiles weren't American bases. They were Iraqi bases where some Americans were co-located. And so the Iraqis are now saying your response to the Americans violating our sovereignty is to do the exact same thing the Americans did. So the Iraqis are taking an attitude of pox on both your houses, which actually is quite consistent for the last decade.
Eamon Javers made the point that the president raised the idea of raising sanctions on Iran, and he asked the question, what's left to sanction? So I pose that question to you. What's left to sanction, or who else could the United States sanction as a way to get at Iran?
Well, with regard to many of the sanctions, one of those issues that could be brought up would be international air travel into Iran to isolate Iran further. We can talk about secondary sanctions. In many cases, those sanctions already exist. And when it comes from a business perspective, one of the reasons why French businesses, German businesses, Japanese businesses are upholding to the sanctions, even against the desire of their own diplomats and elected officials, is because, of course, companies answer to their shareholders rather than diplomats, and they're not going to risk multi-billion-dollar fines.
Michael Rubin, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Adding to the tensions, a Boeing 737 leaving Tehran for Ukraine crashed. All 176 people on board were killed. This video may show the final minutes of the flight. A ball of fire flying through the air. The airplane then exploded seconds after hitting the ground. The video was shared by a news agency run by Iranian students. It has not been verified by NBC News. Let's go to Phil LeBeau for more details on this developing story. There was even some back and forth about what caused the crash in the first place.
Right, because initially there were reports that there was a mechanical problem, maybe some type of an engine failure. But let's be honest, whenever there is an airplane crash, those initial reports, 99% of the time, they are way off. You've got to let the investigators get in there. Here's what we do know about this crash, Contessa. This Ukrainian Airlines flight was flying from Tehran to Kiev, but it did not take off for long. In fact, 2 minutes after takeoff, it crashed. 176 people on board died. Now, there have been reports out of the Iranian news services that the country may not turn over the black box to investigators, which then brings up the question, well, wouldn't the NTSB, wouldn't Boeing, wouldn't others be involved? Typically, yes, but these are not normal times when it comes to Iran and diplomatic relations, so we'll see how that investigation proceeds. As you take a look at shares of Boeing now, it was down more pre-market as we were just learning about this crash. It has come back a little bit. Keep in mind, Cowen also out today with a downgrade of Boeing due to concerns about the 737 MAX. Cowen says the MAX costs continue to rise. Therefore, cash flow will be weighed upon a little bit more than previously expected. That's likely weighing on the stock as much as anything. Guys?
This was a 737 version. How close is it as a piece of aircraft to the 737 MAX?
To the MAX? It's the version right before the MAX. So they started building this, I think, in 1996. And then in 2011, realizing that they had to come up with a more fuel-efficient version of the 737, Boeing said, we're going to come up with the MAX. So they built the NG all the way up until, I want to say, the beginning, maybe the first half of 2019. There were still a few in the pipeline then. But they've built about 8,000 of them, Tyler, and it has a strong safety record in terms of how many are used around the world and how well it does.
All right. Phil, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Phil LeBeau. Coming up, Carlos Ghosn holding a wild 2-hour press conference in Lebanon, explaining his reasons for leaving Japan in a box. More on the story everybody is talking about. I don't blame him for sweating. Long flight in that box. Plus, the president calming tensions over Iran and sending stocks soaring to record highs. But does that mean worries are over? Or do you still need some portfolio protection? What you need to be doing with your money right now. We'll be right back.
Imagine yourself in an unspoiled paradise, discovering the charms of a new city, or sampling street food with the locals. Fly from London to more than 160 destinations worldwide and make 2020 a year like never before with Qatar Airways, named world's best airline by Skytrax. Our incredible selection of special fares are available now. Book today at QatarAirways.com. Qatar Airways, going places together.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, hook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Smart Sports Wagering Talk is now on TuneIn. This is Brett Musburger. The Better Network is now on TuneIn. Search BETR. Be better informed. Be better prepared. And remember, cash and tickets is what it's all about.
The NBA is on TuneIn Premium.
Pointer by Anthony Davis. That's good!
Each week, TuneIn picks an NBA game you just can't miss. Two of the top teams in the Western Conference go head-to-head. This Sunday, the Clippers are at the Nuggets. Tip-off is at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Three ball on the way. He got it to go! Three from the angle. Got it!
Search NBA to follow your favorite NBA team today.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour. But we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
Welcome back. The former head of Nissan, Carlos Ghosn, broke his silence with a very animated 2-hour press conference in Beirut, a week after escaping Japan, where he spent more than a year in custody. Here's part of what he had to say.
I was left with no other choice but to protect myself and my family. It was a difficult decision and a risk one only takes if resigned to the impossibility of a fair trial. So I can tell you, that means it's not very difficult to come to conclusion. You're going to die in Japan, or you're going to have to get out. I am innocent of all the charges, all of them. And I can prove it now, because I start to have a lot of documents, and there are many more documents to come. I would be ready to stand trial anywhere where I think I can have a fair trial. Anywhere.
The Great Escape has certainly captured the world's attention, and joining us to talk about it, Jeff Lanza, who's the retired FBI special agent, president now of the Lanza Group. It's great to see you today. What do you make of the fact that he was in such close supervision in Japan and yet was able to escape his home, hop on a train, get to Osaka, get on a plane, make it through Turkey to Lebanon?
Well, apparently he wasn't under that close supervision at his home in Japan anyway. So normally when you hold someone without bond, which he was being held for a year without bond, they're either a flight risk or a danger. In this case, I would assume it was because he was a flight risk. So why did that change all of a sudden? And if it did change, then you at least have some sort of security put in place at his home. If you can't afford the resources, then you do electronic security. And Japan, one of the leaders in the world in electronic technology, does not have the technology to put ankle bracelets on people. That seems absurd. But in any case, they were asleep at the switch in terms of their monitoring of Ghosn. And his ability to then get out of the city through planes, trains, and automobiles was pretty easy after he got out of his home. Now, once he was out of there, and he got on the train, not noticed, flew to Turkey, then it was easy from that point on.
Jeff, Interpol has put a red notice on him. What does it mean, and can they force Lebanon's hand where Carlos Ghosn is concerned?
A red notice is by Interpol is not an order. It's a request for any country that's in the Interpol system to take an action. In this case, the action would be to take someone into custody. It's doubtful that Lebanon will act on that request, the red notice, because Ghosn is a citizen of that country, and they have shown in the past and have indicated that they're going to protect their own citizens. It's unlikely they will act on that notice or at any point in the future have him taken into custody and extradited back to Japan to face charges, or to any other country for that matter.
Is it possible the Japanese wanted him to escape?
Wow. I can't imagine any situation where they would have wanted him to escape unless, as he stated in his press conference today, these charges are more political in nature or trumped-up charges, and they didn't have a case that they can win in court. Maybe under that scenario, you would think that it's possible they wanted him to escape so he wouldn't have to face trial, but that's really kicking this whole thing up a notch.
So when he left Tokyo, he traveled to Osaka, we believe, by train, and he wasn't surveilled?
Right. So apparently they did not have surveillance. His defense attorneys were responsible for providing, according to reports, reports about his whereabouts every month, which seems a little lax to me.
Not only that, but there are reports that Nissan had people surveilling him as well. They missed his great escape, and now they have gone back to keeping an eye on him in Lebanon because the house where he's staying is actually owned by Nissan, and Nissan's in the legal process of trying to evict him from this house. Do you think that there's any chance here that Nissan gets its way in forcing him to justice somehow?
Probably not. So because he's in Lebanon, even though he's living in Nissan's house, at some point he may be removed from the house. But he's probably got the wherewithal and the financial resources to live in any other place that he wants to. So I don't think that's going to be an issue. The funniest part of the escape, though, is not the train trip, because I guess some reports indicated he was allowed to travel in Japan. Others have said he can only be in Tokyo. But in any case, after the train, he got on a taxi, a common public taxi, to go to the airport where he flew to Turkey.
Where they put him in a box and load him on the plane. There have been reports that he was aided by a security consultant with U.S. connections, or was a former U.S. Green Beret. I can't keep the story straight. How many companies are there like that one around the world, in case I ever need their assistance? How many companies are there, and how do you find a person who can exfiltrate you from that kind of situation?
So Tyler, those type of people exist all over the world, and they consider themselves experts in removing people, exfiltrating people, but normally under situations where they're being held against their will. We're talking about kidnapping cases, and that's what they specialize in, and they practice for that. They train for that type of thing. So those type of techniques may have been used here, even though he officially, as he would say, he was being held as a victim, maybe sort of a kidnapping victim. But those people are all over the world that can do things like that, and he found, obviously, the right people to help him in this case.
Good to know them when you need them.
Jeff, thank you so much for that. I'm just curious what you've done that you think you might need.
I'm just wondering. I'm just curious. You never know. You never know. All right, let's take a look at the price of oil right now. Down 5% today, below $60 a barrel, as tensions seem to be put on the back burner, simmering now, not boiling, lower than where it was when Iran began to escalate. More on oil coming up. Plus, Beyond Meat shares have lost 2/3 of their value since their peak at the height of meatless mania. But it's clearly a trend that's not going away. Should you sink your teeth into this stock? Power Lunch will be right back.
This is Apple Card.
Boredom, fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. Run, run. Mix it up, skip, run, skip, run. Give yourself a lift. Mix it up, lift. Mix it up, run, lift, splash, skip, lift, run. It's crunch time. Skip, mix it up, run. Mix it up. Add a boxing class. Skip, run, splash, skip, run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing in January. T's and C's apply. Run, mix it up, skip, mix it, run.
Mix it.
Smart sports wagering talk is now on TuneIn. This is Brett Musburger. The Better Network is now on TuneIn. Search BETR. Be better informed. Be better prepared. And remember, cash and tickets is what it's all about.
Pascal gobbles up the rebound and slams it down.
Catch your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back deep three is up and in.
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour, but we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Hello, I'm Nat Coombs from ESPN's The Nat Coombs Show, which admittedly is 1 out of 10 for original podcast name, but 10 out of 10 for NFL chat. Every week, we're dropping 4 episodes with an all-pro lineup of terrific guests, journalists, comedians, players, coaches, you name it, all getting you up to speed with everything gridiron. The Nat Coombs Show, American football, British accent. Add to your favorites and listen on TuneIn.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
Welcome back to Power Lunch. I'm Mike Santoli at the New York Stock Exchange. Beyond Meat up 10% this week on hopes it could secure a supply deal with McDonald's after the fast food chain's talks with rival Impossible Foods broke down. Bernstein Research saying the stock could go above and beyond in 2020, setting a $130 price target. It's up more than 50% from the current quote. Let's bring in your Trading Nation team today. JC O'Hara of MKM Partners and Danielle Shea of Simpler Trading. JC, it's obviously a very, very wild ride in the short time this company's been public. Seems like the fever broke on that real speculative phase, but where do you see the stock at this point?
Well, looking at the short-term pattern, there's really not much to say because stock has been pretty much sideways over the last few months, right? It's trading in a relatively narrow range. But let's remember, this is still a relatively new issue. And anytime we start to see new news come into play, we typically see a pretty volatile reaction. Now, earnings has been a pretty strong catalyst. If we look back at the stock over the last 3 times they released earnings, we've seen absolute moves of 40%, 12%, and 22%. We have the next earnings date set for February 14th. So I don't expect this tranquil sideways price action to last too much longer, as we will be setting up for some new news to be released.
All right, and Danielle, obviously the question surrounding this company has just been exactly how big is the opportunity in plant-based meat substitutes and how much can Beyond Meat capitalize on it, and what is the stock price already factored in? So put that all together, how would you play this?
Well, I agree with JC that it's incredibly volatile, especially in the short term. However, in the long term, I think that they have huge potential. When you look at the niche market that they've created, no one has been able to create a burger like this that's good and that appeals to meat eaters. Meat eaters like it because it tastes good, it's healthier, you can have a smaller ecological footprint, and for those reasons, in the long term, I'm bullish the stock. Short term, definitely a volatile situation, but I love to trade it in the options market when there's a potential short squeeze.
All right. Looking for a way to play the short squeeze clearly to the upside if it happens. JC, yes. Danielle, all right, we're going to keep watching this one. For more Trading Nation, head to our website or follow us on Twitter @Trading Nation. Contessa, back over to you.
All right, thanks, Mike. Ahead on Power Lunch, markets at record highs as both the U.S. and Iran seem to be de-escalating tensions. Are there risks still for investors? Plus more trouble for SoftBank. First WeWork, then WAG, and now a robotic pizza company. We have details on another of its unicorns stumbling. And risky business, companies paying a premium to protect themselves from a growing number of lawsuits. this could end up hitting the IPO market the hardest. All this when Power Lunch returns.
And now, the latest from tradingnation.cnbc.com and a word from our sponsor.
Some people say buy and hold investing is dead, but there's nothing wrong with that strategy as long as you don't buy and forget about it. It's important to make sure that your portfolio doesn't become overly concentrated in one stock or sector due to market appreciation. So don't forget to rebalance your portfolio every 6 to 12 months to maintain your target allocation. I'm Randy Frederick, and Schwab is the better place for traders.
Imagine yourself in an unspoiled paradise, discovering the charms of a new city, or sampling street food with the locals. Fly from London to more than 160 destinations worldwide and make 2020 a year like never before with Qatar Airways, named world's best airline by Skytrax. Our incredible selection of special fares are available now. Book today at QatarAirways.com. Qatar Airways, going places together.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour, but we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted!
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today. Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted!
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today.
Cutting for the net, scores! Along the goal line, Marshawn scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Sue Herrera. Here's your CNBC News update at this hour. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau vowing to get answers from Iran less than a day after a Ukrainian national plane crashed shortly after takeoff from Tehran. All 176 people on board were killed on the Boeing 737-800, including 63 Canadians. Canada no longer has diplomatic relations with Iran, and it hasn't had an embassy there since 2012. A military rescue operation is underway in Australia to save injured animals from the widespread fires. Army veterinarians are treating burned animals, including koalas, at the Kangaroo Island Wildlife Park. New Jersey authorities busting a multi-million-dollar crime ring that doctored common candy into marijuana edibles. Almost 24 people have been charged in connection with the scheme, which reached into New York as well. And Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are planning to step back from their royal duties and become financially independent. They intend to balance their time between the UK and North America. The move comes as speculation of tensions within the royal family continues to rise. You are up to date. That's the news update this hour. Ty, back to you.
Well, that's a very interesting twist there. I guess they've had enough of
the royal life and the paparazzi that go with it. But
I think that's the case, and it's key that they said financially independent, because basically the sovereign grant, which the government gives to the royal family every year, is up considerably, and there's been some tension between the public, the government, and the royals over that. So they definitely included that phrase. I found that interesting.
All right, well, bring them to New Jersey, where the candy's just like marijuana. So, all right. Kidding.
But
kidding.
I know you're kidding. Have a Contessa here. You don't need,
we have a Contessa. We don't need any more royals.
There we go.
Surrounded by royalty here. All righty, we're near session highs. The Dow is up 200 points, while the S&P and NASDAQ reached new highs, at least earlier today they did. Major reversal from last night when the futures were down 400 points on the Dow. Contessa.
Time now for today's power movers, and we start with Walgreens Boots Alliance, which is holding back the Dow from even bigger gains. It missed on earnings and revenue, saying same-store sales were hurt by a decreased emphasis on tobacco. Next up, shares of Grubhub surging double digits on reports the food delivery service is considering strategic options, including a sale. That move comes amid increased competition and falling stock price. Shares are down 60% from its all-time high, up 11% on the day. Smile Direct gaining today and up 35% in the past month. Today, the company announced expansion into Hong Kong, and you can see that's up 10%.
Well, crude collapsing, hitting its lowest level in a month as tensions with Iran ease, at least for today. Let's go to Kate Rogers at the CNBC Commodity Desk. Hi, Kate.
Hi, Tyler. Well, updates on the situation in Iran. Moving oil today with prices sinking. That's after President Trump said Iran appears to be standing down in the Middle East, adding that D.C. would impose sanctions on Iran instead of another military strike. Now, both WTI and Brent had moved higher on the news of the attacks against bases housing U.S. troops in Iraq. Oil is settling lower for the second consecutive session, shedding its gains for 2020 thus far with its worst daily performance since the end of November. Also trading below $60 for the first time since mid-December. Meanwhile, Brent is also posting its worst daily performance since September. Back over to you.
All right, Kate, thanks very much. Well, much of Wall Street feeling like a crisis has been averted. Stocks rallying to new highs as President Trump says Iran, quote, appears to be standing down following the attack on Iraqi bases that house U.S. forces last night. But with stocks making a 600-point move in less than 24 hours, what can you buy now to keep your money safe and protected, or is it really all clear ahead? Let's bring in John Stolfus. He's Chief Investment Strategist with Oppenheimer Asset Management, and Steve Grasso, Director of Institutional Sales at Stuart Frankel and a CNBC Fast Money Trader. John, let me begin with you. I was quite surprised on Thursday and into Friday that markets didn't react more radically on the news that Soleimani had been assassinated or put away. Is the market just smarter than we think it is?
I think it certainly is.
Better at discounting?
I think it's better at discounting dramatic information than it has been ever, as I can recall. And I think that it's behind the resiliency that we see in the market. I think initially you'll see, for instance, in the oil market, will react fairly violently to something like this overnight. But when it's actually considered, and it's considered very quickly, the market is quick to discount what has occurred and shows a resiliency that really is uncanny, but is also marked to this recovery that we have seen since March 9th of 2009.
So as you look at the investing landscape right now and saying what you just said, in other words, that the market is better at discounting risk, does that mean that I need to be less worried about, quote, getting defensive in my portfolio at times where I perceive there to be greater risk?
We certainly think so. We think it's important to know what you own and why you own it. We think it's important to separate the difference between savings and investing. Investing be a longer-term objective. Have an idea what your goals and objectives are, your risk tolerances. For instance, during this period from Friday through Monday, when we published on Sunday night our weekly piece, we said we're sticking with the cyclicals here and that we expected that this would be discounted by the market within a few days. A little bit early, we thought it might be Wednesday or rather Thursday or Friday by the time we got discounted. But it looks like this has been discounted. Some of it is the digitalization process of news. Everything is very quickly reported. Yeah. The analysis is very quick, and communications between governments, even in situations where there's not great relationships through intermediaries, is remarkably sound if you consider just the last 24 hours.
You've seen oil go up and then moderate someone. You've seen gold go up. And Steve, I know you, like John, also like cyclicals. You're getting even more specific about chemicals and paper.
Yeah, and to John's point, these are trading at trough valuations. Anyone who wanted to sell these cyclical names has been given the chance to sell them. The problem is that everyone still rushes into tech. So I like a name like WestRock, WRK, a name like OLN, a name like TSE, but they're all just getting hit and hammered. And to John's point, when does the market say, okay, let's bet on cyclicals that the global recession is not coming? So they keep ushering into these tech names, and a relief rally like this doesn't help our case with the cyclical names, but I believe the time is in short order for that to happen.
You know, we were seeing a lot of experts coming on and talking about energy being an opportunity going into 2020, and then the crisis with Iran hit. How does that play into how you see this playing out over 3 months, 6 months, the full year?
Even funds that are always long energy, that are always bullish energy, said to me yesterday that it was overdone. So we're still in an oversupplied world right now when it comes to energy. We outproduce Saudi Arabia. And who else? Russia. And who else? Go down the list. So we are the top producer. We haven't seen that since basically the 80s. So for me, this is not the time to be long energy. I would, other than a trade, I would exit those energy bets, but I would be long gold. I think the time to be long gold is now.
All right. Thank you very much. Steve Grasso, John Stolfitz, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks.
To the bonds market, Rick Santelli tracking the action at the CME. Hello, Rick.
Hi, Contessa. You know, two-day charts on a day like today are so revealing, considering that basically the algos made all markets go down yesterday. Look at a two-day of 10s. We dropped down to 170. But the interesting thing is, outside of the most recent rally pushing rates up, we ended up opening in our time zone just about the same spot we closed. Now, look at two-day of Boons, a lot different scenario. Basically, their cash market was closed when the Iranian missiles were flying, so they just kept extending. As a matter of fact, if you open the chart up, they've extended the point now where they're looking as though we potentially can have the best yield closes in a long time against the 10-year. It's now getting close to 200, close to a 20-month narrow on the relationship. Finally, let's look at what's going on with regard to the dollar. Dollar index is at the highest level, should it close here, since the day after Christmas. We'll call it 2 weeks. Tyler, back to you.
All right, Mr. Santelli, thank you very much. Up next, a new year means new changes to the tax law. We'll tell you what you need to know to protect your money and maximize it, plus SoftBank's latest startup slip-up. Zoom, the company that made a splash with its robotic pizza makers, is now slicing a big portion of its workforce. Hold the pepperoni. Power Lunch will be right back.
The Bond Report is...
Imagine yourself in an unspoiled paradise, discovering the charms of a new city, or sampling street food with the locals. Fly from London to more than 160 destinations worldwide and make 2020 a year like never before with Qatar Airways, named world's best airline by Skytrax. Our incredible selection of special fares are available now. Book today at QatarAirways.com. Qatar Airways, going places together.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
Along the goal line, Martin scores! It takes it home!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
Here's Pietrangelo, he scores!
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium.
The move, and a shot, faced off.
From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn. We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour, but we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
Be better informed, be better prepared. The Better Network is on TuneIn. This is Brent Musburger. Search BETR and start hanging out with me and my guys in the desert weekday afternoons. The Better Network is now on TuneIn.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow
Bayless.
and TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Another SoftBank-backed unicorn stumbling. Zoom, a food and delivery innovation company known for its robotic pizza business and valued at $1 billion, announced major job cuts. Deirdre Bosa has the story for us. Hi, Deirdre.
Hey, Contessa, that's right. Robotic pizza is no more. In shutting down that business, Zoom is cutting 360 jobs, and that accounts for about half of its total workforce, and it's embracing food packaging. This is an area that has seen better traction. Now, the startup CEO and founder, Alex Garden, telling me that today was a difficult one, but he's looking forward to focusing on the parts of the business that are showing what he calls explosive growth. Now, as Contessa mentioned, this is another stumble for SoftBank's Vision Fund, which invested $375 million into Zoom, bestowing that unicorn status, $1 billion valuation. Now, like other SoftBank-backed companies, though, that growth at all costs model is no longer being received quite as well, especially after WeWork's high-profile stumble and Uber's disappointing debut. Over the last few months, the Vision Fund has seen a number of its portfolio companies announce layoffs and executive changes. Zoom is just the latest. Others include WAG, Katera, and others. Now, as for the SoftBank relationship, though, Garden tells me that reports that there is any acrimony is incorrect. Back to you guys.
All right, Deirdre, thank you very much. A new year brings new opportunities to save more and reduce your tax burden. CNBC has partnered with Acorns, the saving and investing app, on a financial wellness and education initiative called Invest in You, Ready, Set, Grow. And Sharon Epperson joins us now to tell us how to make the most of the tax changes for 2020, relatively few of which I've even heard of.
A few of them you may have heard of, but you may not know the new limits. Boosting retirement savings this year is the top financial goal for nearly a third of U.S. adults, and that's according to a new survey from the National Endowment for Financial Education. But many admit that they're stressed about it. Now, to help ease the anxiety, you need to figure out how much you could save and how much it could save you in taxes. In 2020, you can put away up to $19,500 in your 401k, and if you're 50 or older, you can add another $6,500 with a catch-up contribution for a total of $26,000. These limits are the same for a Roth 401k or a traditional 401k, and contributions to a Roth account are made with after-tax money. Withdrawals are generally tax-free in retirement, while contributions to a traditional 401k will reduce your taxable income dollar for dollar. Now, under the Secure Act, which was signed into law in December, part-time employees who work over 1,000 hours in a year are now also eligible to participate in their company's 401k plan. The limits for individual retirement accounts, whether they're Roth or traditional IRAs, will stay the same in 2020 at $6,000. If you're 50 or over, you can put away an extra $1,000 for up to $7,000 total. Now, another change this year, thanks to the Secure Act, you can contribute to a traditional IRA forever as long as you have earned income. There's no longer an age limit. And for more on 2020 tax tips, go to cnbc.com/investinYou. One last thing to mention, guys, is that NBC Universal and Comcast Ventures are investors in Acorns.
So when it comes to retirement accounts, is there a percentage that you should be putting away?
Well, of course, you should put away enough to get the company's matching contribution. That's what every financial advisor says. But a lot of folks don't even have an idea of what their take-home pay really should be and make sure they don't get too much of a tax bite or get too big a refund come tax time. So as you're trying to figure out that percentage that you're going to have taken out of your pay for your retirement accounts, make sure you understand what your withholding is on taxes. And you can go to the IRS website. They have a little calculator to help you figure it out. You can fill out a new W-4 form and make sure that you put the right information in there so you get the right take-home pay that you need.
Great advice. Sharon, thank you so much. Well, from bad deals to bad behavior, there are so many reasons a company could get sued. Today, a case being decided could have a major impact on shareholder lawsuits in the future. The story's coming up on Power Lunch.
Whether you've enjoyed the legendary terrain and Telluride,
imagine yourself in an unspoiled paradise, discovering the charms of a new city, or sampling street food with the locals. Fly from London to more than 160 destinations worldwide and make 2020 a year like never before with Qatar Airways, named world's best airline by Skytrax. Our incredible selection of special fares are available now. Book today at QatarAirways.com. Qatar Airways, going places together.
Right now, instead of hearing this, you could be listening to the music that keeps you moving with TuneIn Premium. Find today's biggest songs and all of your favorites commercial free. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Down the middle of the 10, got to the 5, tumbles in, touchdown.
TuneIn has your NFL playoffs live all weekend. So when you're running to the store or stuck in traffic, TuneIn has you covered.
He's taking contact, and he kicks it in. Touchdown! Puts his head down, crashes and spins, and dives. Touchdown!
Search NFL and get prepared for the action.
Touchdown!
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour, but we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted!
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught, it is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today.
Here we are, 2020, and for U.S. companies, the risk of being sued has skyrocketed. The price of insurance has risen with it, especially the cost to cover your board. Some companies are seeing their premiums for directors and officers insurance quadruple in 2 years. That's according to broker and consulting firm Woodruff Sawyer. Why? The number of companies getting sued has soared an estimated 150% over the last decade. Some are event-driven lawsuits. Think cyber attacks and Me Too. Those events can then cause share prices to fall, leading to securities class action lawsuits, and then derivative suits, which accuse the board and the executives of failing in their responsibilities. Take Wells Fargo, which settled for a record $240 million. That lawsuit alleged executives and the board failed to stop the opening of millions of bogus customer accounts. Insurance paid the whole $240 million. That brings us to the Delaware Supreme Court, where today a judge heard final arguments in a case involving Blue Apron, Roku, and Stitch Fix. The decision could dramatically change how shareholders are allowed to file class action suits. Priya Huskins is a senior vice president at Woodruff Sawyer and was inside for today's hearing. Priya, great to see you. Why does this matter not only to Blue Apron and Stitch Fix and Roku, but to companies nationwide?
Contessa, on its face, this seems like an obscure little case that's about whether IPO companies will be sued in just federal court or in a lot of state courts at the same time. What's actually at stake is access to the kind of growth capital that allows companies to do things like create great jobs and shareholder value. And that's because if this litigation persists, the cost of the litigation is so high that the insurance becomes completely unaffordable, and that will end up choking the IPO pipeline.
And so basically these companies are arguing that they should be allowed to write into their bylaws or into their charter documents a mandate that in state court where juries might work in their favor. How does this affect insurance prices?
That's exactly right. It's not new that IPO companies will be sued, but because a federal Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court case in 2018 changed the landscape, those companies are being sued repetitively and duplicatively. So it's the same company, the same set of facts, being sued now in multiple state courts and federal court. That's what has caused the price of this insurance to escalate so dramatically. If we win this case in the Delaware Supreme Court, we should expect companies to immediately start putting in these provisions, federal forum provisions, into their bylaws, and that will mean it'll go back to what we're used to. Of course, if shareholders need to sue, they can do that, but they should just do that in federal court.
What impact does the skyrocketing number of cases, the size of the settlements, do to the IPO market in general?
So I've been talking to a number of clients, and what they say is, does it even make sense to go public? And that's obviously bad for corporate America. A quick example, Contessa, if you are a small mid-market life science company, you're planning to raise $100 million in an IPO so that you can fund research. Now suddenly you're being told that, well, that's great, but you're going to have to put aside, let's call it $10 million for your deductible, maybe another $5 million just in insurance premiums, so that you can have insurance for your directors and officers when you go public. Now the price is because there's so much expensive litigation, but you can see in my example why executives are saying, hang on, does it even make sense to go public?
Aon told me that
it's a little bit crazy that insurance would be the reason you wouldn't go public.
Aon says that the sectors that are most likely to be sued then as IPOs are biotech, new technology, some retail, some healthcare. Would these companies all be able to get this kind of insurance?
So to date, we have seen insurance markets continue to provide insurance, but what you're alluding to is absolutely right. Capital is leaving insurance. Insurance carriers do not want to put up insurance for these kinds of risks, and it's because it's a loss leader for them.
Priya, thank you so much for joining us outside the courthouse. I know that hearing was really important to your business, and we appreciate you sharing your expertise with us.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Check Please is next.
Imagine traveling hassle-free with your golf clubs.
Sometimes in business, you have to take risks, but trading across borders and currencies shouldn't be one of them. With Western Union Business Solutions, we can help you manage the risk of doing business internationally. Our valuable experience, expert knowledge, and extensive global network makes us the ideal trusted partner for your business. And with our customer-focused support team, you'll receive a dedicated solution and personalized service. Visit westernunionbusiness.com. Western Union Business Solutions, a global financial network you can trust.
Here at Tesco, we're celebrating over 100 years of great value, with even more great prices that take you back. Like a 500-gram tub of Anchor Salted Spreadable from £3.50 to just £2. All this week at Tesco.
Selected larger stores subject to availability. Offer ends 14th of January.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
Be better informed, be better prepared. The Better Network is on TuneIn. This is Brent Musburger. Search BETR and start hanging out with me and my guys in the desert weekday afternoons. The Better Network is now on TuneIn.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit tunein.com/premium to upgrade.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown to Keenan.
Search NFL today.
Please. Well, maybe the market knows best, or maybe it doesn't, but today it is pretty confident that the worst is behind us in the short term, at least, with respect to our tensions with Iran. The S&P 500 and NASDAQ right now at record highs, the Dow about 60-odd points away from it.
And oil down 5% after some ratcheting down of tensions in the Middle East as well.
So watch the next hour, because the final hour of trading could get volatile, though there is nothing on the headline watch that would suggest that it would be any more volatile than normal.
Any more compelling than a Carlos Ghosn news conference.
Go on.
Thank you for watching Power Lunch.
Closing bell starts right now.
It does indeed. Welcome to the closing bell. We are at session highs, up 235 points on the Dow with 59 minutes left of trade. I'm Wilfred Frost.
And I'm Morgan Brennan, in for Sarah Eisen. We start with breaking news and a dramatic one-on-one interview with Carlos Ghosn. Longtime Nissan chairman speaking out today about why he decided to flee Japan in late December over charges of financial misconduct. Nissan and Japanese prosecutors claim Ghosn misstated his future compensation and funneled company assets for personal gain. Ghosn has maintained his innocence since being arrested in November 2018, and he just sat down with CNBC contributor Michelle Carusa Cabrera in Beirut, Lebanon.
Obviously, you masterminded this incredible escape out of Japan, worthy of a movie. How did you do it?
Well, I did myself, obviously with the help of some people that I got to know, but as you know, I'm not going to develop this because I'm going to expose them. And you can imagine that I'm not going to take any risk with people who have really dared to give me help into how to leave Japan without creating any trouble, which was the case.
But tell me, you're stuck in a box for several hours, right? Breathing through air holes. What is that like?
I'm not going to confirm or say anything. What I can tell you that it's obviously, you have lots of anxiety when you are in a period where you are transiting out of the country, but you're not still out of reach. But when you go through an experience like mine, I've been arrested in 19th of November 2018 and been through very, very tough times with a lot of adventure, I would say. You're numb. Somehow your ability to feel the situation in which you are is diminished because you protect yourself by numbing yourself. So I would say that it would be fair to say that between November 19, 2018 up to 30th of December 2019, when I arrived to Beirut, was a little bit of a period where it's a kind of parenthesis in my life. I thought that I was in a completely different way. I was feeling completely differently. And somehow I am reborn since I arrived here. So when you tell me what were your emotions, yes, I had some emotion, but somehow they were diminished compared to what I'm feeling now.
And when you finally got out and got to Lebanon?
It's a rebirth. It's a rebirth. I mean, the first face I've seen is the face of my wife in the house of her parents. I can't tell you the joy I had to just be simply with her after spending 9 months, not being able to talk to her, not being able to see her, with absolutely no end in sight for this kind of ridiculous ban that they put on me. It has a special taste. So in a certain way, it helps you put back priority in your life about who are the people who are the most important, what are the things you should be doing. I'm a different man today.
How much did it cost?
I've seen a lot of numbers circulating in the press. I think they are very, very generous in general.
Too high.
Yeah. So that's what I can tell you. I don't think you need this kind of money to be able to organize. Obviously, the simpler it is, the better it is, the more chance you have to be successful, and the more discreet you'll be.
You probably don't realize this because you're not in the United States, but you may have just walked into what is a huge controversy in the United States about bail reform, about the poor not being able to pay bail, but the rich being able to do so, and that the justice system is inherently better for the rich. What would you say to people that you exemplify that?
Unfortunately for me, I didn't have this problem in the United States, because at least in the United States, you have a rule of law and you have a established justice, and I didn't benefit from that in Japan. I don't think. Somehow I had the feeling in Japan that because you were supposed or you have a reputation to be powerful and you'll be rich, things are going to be applied to you in a much more rigorous way to prove that justice is the same for everybody. So I've been through a period of time where somehow everybody talking about me say, but he's justiciable like anybody else. So somehow, instead of being above the law, you start to feel that you are below the law, which is people want to implement for you things that usually they would not implement for regular people, just because they feel bad about looking like they are helping somebody who is rich, etc. So I'm not talking about the United States, I don't know the situation, but there are some countries where you have to be careful that in a certain way you don't create a situation where people, because they have some advantageous situation for whatever reasons, they're being treated in a different way than normal people.
Any regrets about Greg Kelly, your subordinate, who's your co-defendant, who's still there?
Greg is a great person. That if he is where he is, it's because he's an honorable person. He refused, I'm sure he refused a plea bargain that would have put him out, but that would mean that he would have to say something different from his own conviction.
Did you try to help him get out? Did you think about trying to get him at the same time?
I couldn't contact him. I was forbidden from any contact with Greg. So even he was in Tokyo while I was in Tokyo, we were totally forbidden, as one condition of my bail is no contact with Greg Kelly whatsoever.
Let's talk about the charges against you. You're not going to face them in Japan, but people in the United States could see, if they Google it, that there's an SEC settlement from last year where you paid $1 million, Nissan paid $15 million to settle charges about you hiding compensation. And when you read that, the accusations against you, it sounds like you were trying to defer a lot of payment until retirement. Is that true? Is that what was happening?
No, I was not deferring anything, because when you defer, that means you acquired something. I didn't acquire anything. What was the situation, and we tried to explain it, and frankly, the fact that we had an agreement with the SEC is no admit and no denial.
Right, you did not admit?
No denial, and they signed it. It just made to be able to concentrate on Japan, because you cannot open two fronts at the same time. It's too much. But in fact, I didn't acquire anything, because the so-called deferred compensation was not signed by the board, but not signed by any representative director. It was kind of a memo that I've done to myself with the help of somebody to keep track of the difference between my compensations as the CEO of Nissan and the average compensation of a CEO of a similar company, followed by Watson. We have the report, the general report about compensation. That's it. That's the document which has been used by the prosecutor to say, oh, you are hiding compensation that should be paid to you. What we are saying, it was not fixed, it was not decided, and it was not paid. So there is no reason for the whole thing. And I can tell you that and again, I shouldn't talk about the case in the United States, because I committed when I signed the agreement, no denial and no acceptance.
But when I read it, though, it sounds like the reason you didn't get the money is because you hadn't retired yet. So when you say you never got the money, that's because you weren't supposed to get it until down the road.
Well, after you retire, the person deciding on compensation is a new board. and you're not part, because by definition, if you're retired, you're not part of the board. So how can you say that it is decided if the people who have to pronounce on these compensation are unknown? Because after you retire, you don't know who's managing the company, you don't know who is member of the board, and what kind of decision has been made. So how can you report a compensation which has not been defined, because we know exactly what was the amount, has not been decided, because the people who are going to decide on the compensation will come in many years to come, and has not been paid? It doesn't make sense. I'm going to tell you one thing. We went to Professor Tanaka, which is the reference in terms of corporate law and compensation in Japan. University of Tokyo is a kind of Harvard Law School of Japan. He said, we give him all the facts, because now we have all the facts from the prosecutor. We give him all the facts. You know what the Professor Tanaka said? He said, it's a shame for Japan that Carlos Ghosn was arrested for this. That's what he said. So we're waiting for him to make the statement. But that's why I'm saying this is a plot, because you've been arrested for this. You went to prison for this without any prior notice. I would understand that I would sit down with somebody who's going to explain, Mr. Ghosn, this memo is questionable. Nothing like this. Went to prison, and then the investigation started.
You've used the word plot, you've used the word conspiracy against you.
Yes.
Why would they want to do something to you?
Well, I explained two reasons. First reason is the decline of the performance of Nissan, where I started to be extremely frustrated with the management that, in fact, I put in place, particularly with Saikawa. So I was very nervous about his job, because he knew that, me representing Renault with 43% of the shareholders, I had the power to remove him from the job at any moment, which, in a way which is justified because the performance of the company was declining. That's the first reason. The second reason, as I said, there is a lot of people who really did not like a kind of merger with Renault. And as long as I was heading the alliance, they trusted that I would protect the autonomy of Nissan. I would protect Nissan from, the fact that the French government wanted to interfere into business that the Japanese did not like at all. But they said, well, why do we have to wait for this guy? Why don't we get rid of this guy? And if we get rid of him, in a certain way, we get rid of Renault. We get rid of the influence that Renault has on us. And they were right.
You're saying that the desire to keep Nissan as a national champion was so strong, they were willing to destroy you and your reputation?
Without any doubt. Without any doubt. Look what they've done. Look at the statements that were made by Saikawa after I was arrested. Look at the cooperation, the complicity between the prosecutor and Nissan, the support they got from the Japanese government. I mean, the whole thing doesn't make sense. For me, it was obvious. And they got what they wanted, except that Nissan today is running to the ground. This is the only thing they didn't think about, is about will people be able to run the company? And the answer so far, after 14 months, the answer is no, because the company's operating profit is going down. The growth has completely disappeared. The market capitalization of Nissan went down by more than $10 billion. Everything is going down.
If people were to read all the press reports, payments to Oman, the situation with Versailles, they could leave with the impression that over time, whether on purpose or due to poor bookkeeping, that there was commingling of your personal finances with corporate finances. Yeah. Were there?
Well, everything was built in order to let you think that. Nissan has built a very good case with the help of Layton and Watkins, and with the help of other people who are specialists of this kind of things. And they built an image. And they attacked through legal, and they attacked through the media. It was very well done in a certain way. So a lot of people think, okay, well, this guy is shady. That means he's doing all of the things, etc. And while I was in prison, I couldn't defend myself. And everything was done for me not to be able to talk. When I wanted to make a press conference in Tokyo, I came back to prison 24 hours after they came with new charges, immediately. So, and when the new prosecutor was named about 2 months ago, and the press in Japan was complaining to the prosecutor, why do you forbid Carlos Ghosn to talk to the press? He said, no, I'm not forbidding him to talk to the press. He can talk to the press. But at the same time, as he is free to talk to the press, we are free to bring new charges, which was a thinly veiled threat that if you open your mouth, you're going to go back. So we want to end all of this. I want to be able to speak. I want to be able to defend myself. I want a justice system where attack and defense have same rights, and it's balanced. and let the truth happen. I was in a system where it's not a question, it's not about the truth, it's about winning. It's about confession. It's about, I think you're guilty, so I'm going to prove you're guilty. I don't care about the truth. I'm going to select all the things that are favorable to my theory, and everything else I'm going to reject it.
Prosecutors do that in the United States too, generally, though, don't they?
I think prosecutors everywhere in the world do it, but there is a limit to that. And then you have a limit of power. I think in the United States, the judge is the real boss. Well, in Japan, in my opinion, he's not.
You have a French passport?
Yes.
French citizenship?
Yes.
They don't extradite?
No.
Are you going to travel to France at all?
Maybe, yes. I mean, I just arrived here, but I'm going to see with my lawyers if there is, what is the situation. Well, I have the same thing with Brazil. Brazil does not extradite its citizen, and I have the Brazilian passport. It's the same thing in Lebanon. I'm blessed enough to have the three citizenship, and I am citizen of three countries which don't extradite their citizens.
What if you have to spend the rest of your life in Lebanon, though? Are you ready for that?
Well, it's better than spending the rest of my life in Japan. That's unfortunately the perspective that I was seeing, because I didn't have even a date for my trial. You know, the speedy trial is one of the basic elements, basic rights of any human being. I've been arrested in November 19. We were in December. 14 months later, I didn't have a date for the trial. And then, you know, because the charges are different, there were going to be two trials. So we didn't even have a date for the first trial. So I was looking at this and saying, oh my God, that means this is going to take 4 or 5 years. Because you have the trial, then you have the appeal, and then after the appeal you're going to go to Supreme Court, and all of this is very slow. On top of this, as you know, the trials are in Japanese. We asked, for example, Greg Kelly was with me, had the same request, was to change the translator because we didn't understand anything from the translator. They refused.
They wouldn't give you a translator?
No, there was a translator, but we said, well, we don't understand anything from the translator. We asked to change the translator because we don't understand the translator. They refused. Well, it's refused. We asked for a simultaneous translation because a lot of the debate took 20 minutes. Then the judge would make a summary in 30 seconds. We would love to follow what happened in the 20 minutes. And then he would say to the translator to translate. Then the translator would say something that difficult to understand. So the whole thing didn't make any sense. I mean, we were not here with the real willingness to make us participate to our own trial. We were here with, you know, some rules. Okay, we need a translator. Here is a translator. We don't understand. We don't care. This is it. You know, simultaneous translation. We have never done it. Simultaneous translation. Never done it.
Anything I should have asked you, or you expected me to ask you?
No, I think the only thing I want to tell you that you know, a lot of people perceive this, that I am running from justice, which is really the last thing I want to know. If I had some reassurance that I would get a fair trial in Japan, and if there was a possibility for my wife to join me in Japan, I would have stayed in Japan, because this is the place where I should have defended my name and my reputation. But when they cut me from my wife, they don't give me any perspective of seeing her again. Again, before the trial starts, which we're talking about 2 to 3 years down the road. Plus, I'm facing a 99.4% conviction rate, which is a haunting number. Well, I was very anxious about the future. Yes, I was very anxious.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle Caruso-Cabrera joins us now from Beirut. She's here along with Josh Brown, CEO of Ritholtz Wealth Management, who's with us for the full first hour. Michelle, fantastic interview. He spoke there at the start of the interview about feeling a sense of rebirth. I'd say it came across as more than that. He felt very calm, very confident, very composed. Do you get the feeling he thinks that this escape from Japan means for the rest of his life now, he is in the clear?
Oh, it's certainly from Japan, absolutely. Whether or not he's going to be able to clear his name in the court of public opinion, that we're going to have to see. We got to think about is he did this interview after he did already previous to that a 2.5-hour news conference with more than 100 members of international press, which he did in English, in Arabic, in French, and Portuguese, with documents that he said demonstrated his innocence against the allegations that have been alleged against him in Japan, and suggestions that have come out of France as well. What also remains to be seen, Wilf, is just how much of a spotlight remains on the Japanese legal system as he goes on this big
tour to try to clear his name. It's going to highlight the fact that things are very different in Japan, say, than they are in the United States, where you can be detained without being arrested, where you can be questioned for hours without your attorney being there. You don't have the right to remain silent, the so-called Miranda rights that we know of in the United States. And there's been lots of criticisms about Japan about whether they're going to change that. And we'll see if anything changes because of this. But they remain quite defensive about the way they process their defendants there.
Michelle, great work. I thought his comments about Nissan now being run into the ground were really interesting. And also when you asked him about whether he would potentially go to France, one's got to wonder what actually happens to this alliance, which is already on such precarious grounds, especially if he does end up going to France.
Yeah, it seems almost dead at this point. He had tried to orchestrate this large holding company, but Japan really wanted nothing to do with it. And align that with the fact that the French government can be so interventionist that you need a very, very strong and dominant personality to hold the thing together. And, remember, he's also facing issues perhaps with Renault in France, so it's not clear that he could go back to fixing this at this point.
Michelle, I think your points about the Japanese legal system have been certainly eye-opening for all of us over the last year, and the 99% conviction rate, perhaps the chief point among that has shocked us all. That said, if he takes a role as a senior executive at a Japanese company, he should be aware of what the legal rules and system are if he were potentially to be seen to break any of the rules. I also wanted to ask Michelle what you felt in terms of your point. Will he clear his name in the court of public opinion? You were in that long news conference earlier. Did the questioning suggest that people were on his side or against him? And you mentioned the different languages and nationalities of the press in front of him. Was there a theme that came across? Lebanese press support him, French press didn't, or what? Any themes you took away from that?
That was extremely interesting to be in the news conference and to see all the different nationalities asking questions. And he was very pointed that he wanted to make sure that every nationality represented got a question. And at times he would say things like, "That is such an Italian question." And he was right. So the Japanese questioners were tougher. There were the English press asked a lot about the conspiracy that he talked about. The Lebanese press questioned him about shaking hands with the leadership of Israel, and why would he shake the hands of someone who has the blood of the Lebanese people on his hands? So that goes right to the heart of all the geopolitics happening here in Lebanon, which, remember, when we hear the White House talk about the Iranian proxy wars happening and there are militias across the world, that's right here in Lebanon. At one point, a French reporter asked, "Why didn't you go to France?" I mean, she was almost clearly insulted that he came to Lebanon instead. It was incredibly interesting to watch. Whether he's going to really solve it in the court of public opinion, I think he's got to get a little more precise about answering questions related to the settlement with the SEC, related to whether or not there's commingling of finances, whether by mistake or over the years, to get a little tighter on that, to be clear about it.
Michelle, thank you so much. Great work. Safe travels back. Josh, quick question to you. What's your reaction to that extraordinary interview and the press conference this morning?
This is like history in the making. This could totally be a movie. We've actually...
Though he denied a Netflix deal, of course.
Sure. Wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I wouldn't be like promoting stuff. It's not like he's George Clooney on a talk show. We've seen this before. Kobe Alexander from Converse Technology. I think it was like 13 or 14 years ago. He was charged with securities fraud and wire fraud. This is the CEO of a Israeli-based but New York Stock Exchange traded technology company. And when his trial date was approaching, he ran. First he went to Israel, then he went to Germany, and then I think he ended up in Namibia. And he stayed there for a very long time, and it wasn't until a couple of years ago he finally said, "You know what? I'll face charges," came to New York, then they let him transfer to Israel to serve the rest of his sentence, and now I think he's out. So I guess my point is, it's a wild story. It's not totally without precedent. A lot of people talking about John McAfee from the antivirus software company. So we've seen versions of this. I don't think the steamer trunk angle has ever come into play. So it's a little bit more theatrical, maybe, than past versions.
Fascinating story and great interview there from Michelle. We've got just 37 minutes left of the session. We are at session highs, rallying just during the last 20 minutes. During that interview, we're up 270 points on the Dow. Up next, we'll break down the charts to show you why the market has been very resilient in recent years amid geopolitical risks.
Plus, we will get the outlook for oil prices when we speak to former Shell President John Hofmeister.
What do advisors look for in an ETF? Imagine yourself in an unspoiled paradise, discovering the charms of a new city, or sampling street food with the locals. Fly from London to more than 160 destinations worldwide and make 2020 a year like never before with Qatar Airways, named world's best airline by Skytrax. Our incredible selection of special fares are available now. Book today at QatarAirways.com. Qatar Airways, going places together.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour. But we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
Down the middle of the 10, got to the 5, tumbles in, touchdown.
TuneIn has your NFL playoffs live all weekend. So when you're running to the store or stuck in traffic, TuneIn has you covered.
Puts his head down, crashes and spins and dives. Touchdown!
Search NFL and get prepared for the action.
Touchdown!
Be better informed, be better prepared. The Better Network is on TuneIn. This is Brent Musburger. Search BETR and start hanging out with me and my guys in the desert weekday afternoons. The Better Network is now on TuneIn.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
You might already know that TuneIn allows you to listen to all the pro sports leagues wherever you go. But did you know TuneIn is also home to the wide world of college sports?
Open 3, DeAndre Hunter got it! Hand off Carruthers, big